Hey, we watch the entire spectrum of film. We honor the entire spectrum of film. You sit at the top.
That is true.
It's true at the bottom. And we will return next week with a very long montage summarizing this episode.
I challenge you to edit that together.
I don't know how you talked me into this, Tommy. Hell, I must be crazy. You know, if the institution ever found out about this, they would haul our butts back in and straitjacket them. Permanent.
You didn't have to come, Oz. This is between me and Jason.
I know. But I still don't get the therapy here. All you need to know is Jason's dead, right? Seeing his corpse ain't gonna stop your hallucinations.
Seeing it won't, but destroying it will. Jason belongs in hell. And I'm gonna see he gets there.
It all started in 1957. There was a boy, a camper at Camp Crystal Lake. He was different than the other kids. And for some reason, nobody was paying attention to him, and he wasn't a very good swimmer. He drowned.
It's awful.
A year later, when the camp reopened, 2 camp counselors were found brutally murdered, slashed to pieces. They closed the camp down and tried to reopen it in 1962, but then they found all the water had been poisoned. At that point, the locals started to call this place Camp Blood. In 1979, Steve Christie, who was part of the Christie family who owned Camp Crystal Lake, tried to reopen it. Everybody, except for one girl, was brutally slain.
Oh, my God.
They say it was the boy who drowned in the lake.
But he drowned.
We didn't find it.
No, he didn't.
Then he's still there.
He got up out of the lake, apparently, as a small boy. And he lived like a feral man ape, like a stink ape in the woods, like a Sasquatch. And he built himself a shed, a shack, a shanty, a lakeside shanty to live in with a toilet and no indoor plumbing. Where did the feces go, Paul?
In the lake.
Nobody knows.
Well, that's how the lake got poisoned, Jason.
But he had a toilet. 5 years later, in 1984, a bunch of kids, some counselors came to get some training. And instead, they got murdered.
Well, half of them, right?
Well, yeah, half of them. The rest got drunk. And then the next day, some other people in a different part of the town, but at the same lake, they got murdered. But this
What are the
time,
odds?
it was in 3D. And then,
Horrifying.
a couple of days later, some more people got murdered. And this time, Corey Feldman was there.
Thank God.
And then, 5 more years later, an EMT, a paramedic, saw his fatso son get brutally hacked to pieces by a psychopath at a nut house. It was all, during the filming, there's some kind of a porno. The whole thing's really weird. I barely remember it, but it was real sleazy. Real sleazy. So he dressed up like Jason, but he wasn't Jason. And then Corey Feldman was contractually obligated to be elsewhere, so he didn't come back to Crystal Lake. And they got this other guy right before he became an evangelical. And then he was going to be the new Jason. But then everybody hated all of that.
Yeah.
And even though they said that Jason's ashes had been scattered and there was nothing left of him, the craven movie producers who are ashamed of putting these movies out, but not ashamed of cashing the checks and getting the bonuses that these movies gave them, decided to make another movie. And they didn't just make one more movie. They made 6 more movies. And that brings us, Paul, to the worst nightmare of them all. The Binge Movies, Halloween Spooktacular, Friday the 13th Retrospective, Part 2. Paul, we're beginning with Part 2 of the retrospective.
We are.
It brings us up, if we're following the timeline of events I just laid out in Oscar-worthy fashion to you, that brings us to the year 1990. Not the year the movie was released, but the year the movie would have had to have been set in to make any sense of the timeline I just laid out.
Does that mean that Tommy Jarvis in this film is only like 18?
I have no idea how old. Okay, so Tommy Jarvis was what in Final Chapter?
11?
What would you guess?
10,
11 years
12?
old? Right. Yeah. Oh, Corey Feldman was really young. I don't think he was quite 12. I mean, he did have a penchant for boobs, but I don't think that's quite right. Let's say he was like 8 or 9 years old. This information's probably out there somewhere. And right now, all the Friday the 13th fanatics are screaming at us saying, "You fucking noobs, you fucking marks, you can't get anything right."
Feldman was 13 when this film was released.
Holy shit.
When
my God.
Final Chapter was released.
So was Tommy Jarvis supposed to be 13? Is that what we're supposed to assume?
Let's just make that assumption. Maybe 12. Okay. Maybe what time was shot 12.
Okay. So let's say Tommy Jarvis is 12 years old, all right? Yeah, let me dig through my timeline here. Tommy Jarvis is 12 years old. Friday the 13th, the Final Chapter, is supposed to take place in 1984. Came out in 84, right? So it's concurrent. So he's 13. So by 1990, he would be how old, Paul? 6 years older, so he'd be 19, like you said. Yeah.
Tommy Jarvis looks a lot older than 19 to me in this film.
He also doesn't look like Corey Feldman, nor does he look like the guy who played him in The New Beginning, because he's Tom Matthews now, right? Isn't that who plays him?
It is 26 years old.
Yeah, and looks all of 26 years old during the filming of this. But it's okay because it has to be set in 1990, although they never say it's 1990. But that's the only way the math adds up as far as the years. And so if we're going to call 1986 1990, we can call 26 19. And because it gives us Tom Matthews, arguably the best, definitely my favorite Tommy Jarvis.
For sure.
Mostly because I think the character is really cool. And this is the guy who, of course, starred in Return of the Living Dead just a year before. Mm-hmm. Or 1985. So, Tina, I can smell your brains. Paul is the host of the Countdown Movie and TV Reviews podcast, one of the most successful independent film podcasts in Australia. And he is the very first and greatest guest. No, it's true. I've seen the numbers. He's our very first and greatest guest and a good friend of mine. And he lets me torture him every Halloween by making him binge an entire franchise. This one was so big, we had to split it in 2 parts, like a turd in the bowl. We had to get the turd stick out. Is that a thing in Australia, or are Australians too sophisticated for that? Because in America, now I didn't grow up in a family that did this. And in fact, I find the idea repulsive. But there are people who have a special stick that's in their home just to break up the turds in the bowl.
Oh, we have dunny brushes. Is that what you're talking about?
It's like a toilet brush?
Yep. If you need to get in there to get rid of some of what's left behind after several flushes, you got to do what you got to do.
Now, these are special poop sticks that people just use to break it up. Some people have poop scissors.
What?
This became, see, this is why the internet is a sin, Paul, because people started like, oh, everybody's got poop scissors. I was like, what the fuck? I thought it was a joke or meme. Then all these people are like, oh yeah, our family's had it for, we've always had something to break
generations. They've been handed down.
Yeah. They've been handed down from father to son. Everybody's got a turd cutter in the family. And I don't. My family never had a turd cutter.
That's new to me, I gotta say.
But Binge Movies is the poop scissors for the turd that is the Friday the 13th franchise. I say that, but if you didn't listen to the first episode, you might have missed me waxing poetic about the fact that I think of all of the horror franchises, certainly the ones we've covered so far, and we've covered Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and now the mother of them all, in a sense, even though it was a ripoff, the Friday the 13th series. I think I have the most nostalgia and the most goodwill towards this one. I don't know why. They're all the same movie, more or less.
There's no rational explanation as to why, having reset through them.
No, there is none. But there's something about them that just sort of warms the cockles of my heart. And speaking of cockles of hearts, and welcome back, Cotters. I think it's time. I'm looking at my watch. Let's move forward to 1990 for a movie that came out in 1986. Of course, we're talking about the thing I already teased at the top of the episode. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives.
They thought the nightmare was dead and buried. They were wrong. Jason lives. Happy Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. Rated R.
Starts Friday, August 1st at a theater near you.
Jason Lives was directed by Tom McLaughlin, written by Tom McLaughlin. It was released August 1st, 1986, on a budget of $3 million. It only made $19.4 million. I say only because this was the lowest earner of the first 6 films. This was considered a flop by Paramount Pictures, and was kind of derided when it originally came out because it was seen as being too silly. This is the triumphant return of Tony Goldwyn, last heard in Tarzan as Disney's Tarzan. Jason here is played by C.J. Graham. I'm going to go on the record. This is going to be controversial. I think he's the superior Jason to Kane Hodder.
Ooh. He's very good in this one. He is absolutely a physical, intimidating presence.
I love this Jason. The physical performance, like we talked about before, I think there was the stunt guy, White.
Ted White, yep.
Ted White, yeah. We're like, okay, he seemed to be the first guy to be like, this guy has to have a personality. He can't just be a mongoloid mountain man, right? He can't just have a weird eye and that's it. Yeah, he shits in a toilet that does not go anywhere. I always found that to be very strange. Like, does his shack have indoor plumbing? I don't think it does. Like he was the first one to be more than a Yeti, more than a Sasquatch, more than the Yeti. He was the first to actually sort of, there's a malevolence to him in the way that he moves and the way that he almost sets traps and stuff. But then we get to full-blown zombie Jason. And we had this conversation towards the end of part 1, but we didn't get fully into it. Let's start from the rip before we dive into the movie. When you think of Jason Voorhees, yes, you think of The Mask, you got that part 3. To you, is the image that is conjured in your head some variation of zombie Jason or still living hillbilly mountain Jason?
It's absolutely Jason with a bag on his head running. No, it is called zombie Jason.
I think, I would argue, and I don't think it's much of an argument, but I would posit that I think anybody, including non-Friday the 13th fans, because this is such an iconic character of people of a certain generation, young people probably have no idea who the fuck he is, and that makes me sad inside. People of a certain generation above, I think the definitive Jason in people's minds is zombie Jason. And this is bizarre to me because, like we talked about, it isn't until the 6th installment of an incredibly profitable franchise that this character fully comes together, even though he's fully falling apart.
Can't argue. I think this is the film which finally works out the formula. I mean, we'll get to what happens with that formula through subsequent efforts, but... And yet, I think the greatest tragedy is, as you're saying, that this is the least profitable one of all.
Yeah,
Which,
up
well,
to
at
this
least
point
this
in the
point, up to
yeah,
this point.
yeah,
It's astounding to me. And this film looks so much. I don't know if we're crossing into the film because we haven't given our summary yet. Are we doing that?
yeah. Let's start with their summaries. Let's start with the synopsis. So we'll start with our synopsis first, then we'll dive into it. Jason Voorhees returns as the living dead to face off against his mortal enemy.
You can't keep a good mass murderer down as Tommy Jarvis resumes his battle with a resurrected Jason and takes his rightful place as the hero of this series.
Let's start with how this movie looks, Paul.
Looks great. For $3 million, this film looks amazing.
This film looks fantastic and has aged the best out of any of these movies visually.
Yep. No arguments at all.
I actually
it looked glossy.
Yeah. When it fires up, you're like, this is the first real movie in this entire franchise. It is an actual. Can we just say that this is the only maybe real actual movie that has characters, backstories, storylines, personalities, distinct characters. Like I was an advocate for part 2 because I think the cinematography is really good and I think the direction is very good. But still, it still has that look of kind of a slightly above grindhouse sort of movie, and that's not to degrade it. I like the way it looks. I like the way it's directed. This one, just a few years later, it has all the production value of any mainstream gothic horror movie. I think the visuals here are incredible. I think the Jason design is great. I think the cinematography is great. I think it's got that 80s wet street neon, dark and smoky sheen to it. Like you said, it's glossy. It just looks like a legit movie.
I mean, stunning is too strong a word, but I was really surprised as to roll this one out. And if you want any better example of how much better a film this is than the last one we covered last week, A New Beginning, both start with this sequence in a graveyard where Jason comes back to life. One is a dream in Corey Feldman's mind, and the other is this is really happening and we're resetting up the whole franchise to go forward. But the difference between these two things is, pun intended, in a sense, night and day. Like, one is so much better filmed and it's legitimately scary, and the other one is comical and really laughable. And so I'm like, hey, we've set ourselves up here. Here we go. There's a great first kill. Poor Tommy Jarvis is racist, does the thing you would do, runs straight to the police, the sheriff, to tell them what's going on, and of course isn't believed. So immediately we're setting things up here in a way which is both interesting, engaging. Yeah, you're going to buy into the fact that lightning striking a corpse which has been in the ground for, well, apparently less than 13 years can come back to life, but that's all right. This series is so silly you're either on board with that or you're not, and you're not watching a film like this if you're not.
Well, McLaughlin, who wrote and directed this, said that he really wanted to make it a gothic horror movie mixed with the old Universal horror films. So he wanted to do basically Frankenstein, right? Where a bolt of lightning brings this reanimates his corpse. Because here we have a problem, okay? The problem is they killed Jason without any ambiguity. He's dead. Mm-hmm. The next movie, they're like, not only is he dead, we turned him to ash. We burned him. We incinerated him. He is nothing but ash. We scattered the ashes. There is no corpse. He is gone, right? Because they were putting a pin in Jason and we're going to not make any more of these movies. And then the movie made a bunch of money and they're like, whoa, shit. Okay, well, Tommy Jarvis will be the new Jason. And then that didn't really pan out because
thank God.
Again, they were half pregnant and they were like, well, it's kind of Tommy, but maybe it's Tommy, but it's not Tommy, but it's this other guy who we don't give a fuck about. But then he's dead too. So now Tommy will be the killer. And everybody was like, boo, this stinks. Mm-hmm. We want Jason back. And so they're like, well, fuck, how do we bring him back? Well, first of all, you can't say that he was cremated. You have to say, well, we thought he was cremated, but they lied. They just buried his body. Mm-hmm. Well, then you still have the problem of he's dead, because if he wasn't, where's he been all this time? And you're like, well, shit. So I love the fact that they just are like, we're going to rotoscope some fucking lightning, Richard Edlund style, out of the sky and bring him back like Frankenstein. And it's a really cool scene. It's got a great mix of The visual gags in this movie are on a completely different tier. And that's what makes this such a smartly directed and written film. You get the illusions of it's like kind of punny, but not too punny. It's like, oh, Tommy, I'm not sure, or Horseshack, I'm not sure my heart can take much more of this. And then, of course, he's the one that gets his heart punched out, which was heavily edited. I love the fact that basically Tommy Jarvis has escaped the insane asylum, and another inmate has come with him, and he's like, I got to make sure he's actually dead. I found the grave. I got to make sure he's actually dead, and I got to send him to hell. The twist of this is, I don't know if you've ever thought through these implications. When they dig him up out of the cemetery and open his coffin, Jason Voorhees is dead, Paul.
Yep.
He's not pretending to be dead. He's not supernaturally somehow still. He is dead. Tommy Jarvis accidentally reanimates him, which means everybody who dies in this movie and every other sequel, their blood is on the hands of Tommy Jarvis. Because had he done nothing, Jason just would have remained a rotted corpse in the grave.
100% agree. That's right. I did think about that. Did have a bit of a giggle to myself. I just left it alone, Tommy. Then everyone would have been fine.
Everybody would have been fine.
Tony Goldwyn would have got to wherever the hell the campgrounds where he was going.
Yeah, that's right.
With his lovely girlfriend, and would have gone. May not have gone to the acting career that he would have had.
Yes.
I don't know.
And Tom McLaughlin, that's his wife in real life. She plays Tony Goldwyn's love interest, I guess, who's in the VW Bug with him. This movie is got a lot of firsts. It's the first to interject real Hollywood level direction. It is the first to almost satirize itself in the slasher genre in general, but in a very savvy way. It is the first to have actual characters in it. It is also the first to have actual fucking kids at a summer camp. We are 6 films in. This is the only time at Camp Crystal Lake we have seen children at the camp.
Are they not children in the first one?
No, because the camp's not open yet.
Okay, there you go. Yep. And the second one's the training, and the third, yep. Okay.
Yes. This is the first time there are actual children at this camp.
Yep. All right. Makes sense. I'll buy it.
But again, Paul, we're 6 movies in. It took them 6 movies to get a bus full of kids at the camp. And the introduction of those kids is so fucking ingenious because our girl is giving, Megan is giving the same spiel that we get in every single one of these movies that irritated you. And every single one of these movies, she's giving a recap of the whole saga. But it's with a nice twist. She's like, I can only think of one thing scarier than Jason. They're like, what's that? And she points, and then the bus full of kids comes up, and they come roaring off the bus. And there's so much great cutaway gags, great humor. There's the of course, he's not quite a harbinger, but he's the undertaker, the graveyard attendant, who's, one of the best lines in the movie is, why did they have to go and dig up Jason? Which is obviously a commentary, and is obviously sort of the public sentiment of especially like film critics of like, oh my God, they went and they fucking dug up this Jason character to do another one of these movies. And then he goes, and then he breaks the fourth wall, looks straight at the camera and goes, some people just have a sixth sense of entertainment or something like that.
Correct.
And he just stares at the theater full of teenagers watching the movie. Even the beginning, when it opens up and you have it's a dark and stormy night and he's reanimated and he comes out of the grave and he looks incredible and he finds the mask because Tommy brought him his fucking mask like an idiot.
With him.
And he puts the mask back on and he grabs the tools that Tommy brought, which he's going to use to murder everybody in the rest of this movie. And he punches Horseshack's heart out, and then Tommy's going to burn him with gasoline. And just as he's about to light the match, it starts pouring down rain. And Jason just looks at the matches and looks at him. It is incredible. And then when we finally, he's got the full mask back on and he does the turnaround or whatever, we go into a full James Bond spoof.
Yep.
And that tells you everything you need to know, which is we're not going to skimp on the gore. Jason is going to be scary, but there's going to be characters. There's going to be character development. And we know that this is a stupid idea for a movie. But since we're all here, let's make the fucking best of it. And they did. They took what should have been on paper the most craven, money-hungry, cash-in movie of all time. The result of a bait-and-switch tactic of killing off Jason, which failed miserably in a studio, falling back on their heels, desperately trying to get the dollars and cents back up. And Tom McLaughlin and crew and cast were like, they got a great group of people together, and they made arguably, I don't want to bury the lead, the best or one of the best in the entire franchise. And I would argue one of the best slashers of the 1980s.
I would say it's inarguable that it's one of the best in the series, and it's probably more debatable to say one of the best slashers, but I'm right there with you. This movie is a lot of fun. It knows exactly what it is. And I mean, even down to the kids, if we skip to the end of the film where they're sort of making commentary on what's going on. So it's not just enough to have the kids there because, of course, we've never put kids in mortal danger the way that they do in this film.
Yes.
So we've got to lighten it up by having, this sort of meta commentary on, so what were you going to be when you grew up?
The one kid's reading a book of existential French philosophy called No Exit. You get the grave digger again. What do you think I am? Some kind of a fart head and a hard cut to the kids. Yeah. You get all of these great smash cuts, these great smash gags. Oh, you led me astray again. And he's like, drink out of the bottle. He's like, oh, Kathleen, you're going to be the death of me. And he throws the bottle back.
It hits Jason.
Hits Jason. There's no break. He turns around. Jason stabs him in the throat with it. You got Sheriff Garris, who's obviously named after Mick Garris. You've got Carpenter Road. You have the town of Carpenter, or Cunningham Road, rather, and the town of Carpenter. You've got Karloff's General Store, which again ties into the Frankenstein, Universal movie illusions of Jason's now basically Frankenstein. I don't know. I fucking love it, man. We have a little bit. I mean, it's just the vaguest of backstory where, I mean, if we really drill down on it, Paul, it doesn't make any sense because Jason is dead. Tommy Jarvis has no reason. Tommy Jarvis has no reason to believe that he's not dead, right?
Yep.
Other than his own paranoia and his memories. Yeah, his memories in which he is Corey Feldman. He remembers himself as Corey Feldman, even though now he's Tom Matthews. That's fine. He had a glow up. And he's like, he's got these books on the occult, and we'll get back to the books on the occult. I know, I get it. We know, we'll get there. And he's like, oh, well, Jason has to, he's not really dead because he has to be returned to his first resting place for his soul to be released and him to go to hell. I think Tommy is desperately wrong because it seemed to me that he had not gotten up in many years out of that grave. And I think Jason was already in hell.
Yep. Yeah, you can't argue with that. I think it's kind of ironic, but also it's fitting for his character because you can, given the events of the second one as well, which I guess we have to take as canon, the second one being his second film.
Yes.
He's so traumatized and so caught up in all of this stuff. I mean, he's improved from where we're leaving at the end of A New Beginning, but he still can't let it go. He needs 100% absolute proof that Jason is gone. And as you say, his soul is cursed to be tormented in hell forever for what he's done. I can't buy into that. I don't think that's a huge stretch at all to think that someone would do something as dumb as dig up a corpse to make sure it's dead, given his mental state. So,
yeah, let's hash this out, Paul. Okay. We're to believe that Jason did not drown in the lake because Jason was not a zombie in part 2 or part 3 or part 4. He was alive. So when he says, I have to take him back to his original resting place where he died, he never died.
Good point.
Then he's struck by lightning and he's reanimated and comes back from hell as a zombie. And then he's like, okay, well, this occult book says I gotta whatever. So I'm going to put a millstone around his neck and a chain and throw him in the lake. And he'll be dead down there. But the movie ends with him very clearly alive in the lake.
Mm-hmm. Just waiting for
I
the
don't
opportunity
think
to come
it's
back.
so much of I don't think it's so much as a gaffe as I think that the Tom McLaughlin here is smart enough to know, well, he wasn't fucking dead and he wasn't dead in the first place. He died, if anywhere, he died in Tommy Jarvis's house. That's where he should be buried, because that's when the fucking machete went through his head.
True. Okay. You're saying this was
So I
deliberate.
think-
Like, no, Tommy just
Yes.
got it wrong.
I think our protagonist is it both right that yes, Jason's back, but he's the one that brought him back. And I think his obsession brought him back. And I think the movie makes no bones about it. He is not dead in that lake. He is alive by the end of this movie. I think the movie knows that this kid is so obsessed. He's got it all wrong. All the facts are wrong in this movie.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Because I think that McLaughlin knows they're going to make a part 7. They're going to make a part 8. And they're going to make a part 9. So ironically, in a really favorable twist, rather than making a movie all about how to resurrect Jason, that's what happens in our cold open. The rest of the movie is about how to try to defeat him, knowing he's not going to be defeated. So the movie is really about a character being wrong about how to defeat Jason. Does that make sense?
It does. It does make perfect sense.
I think he's thinking ahead and going, I'm not going to make a movie where we kill off the bad guy again just for him to show up again. Instead, I'm going to make a movie where the character is thinking he's going to end Jason, but actually is responsible for bringing him back.
Yep, I buy it. I buy it all. I think you've thought it through perfectly, especially if he saw the future and knew there was going to be more, because this is the one that sets up then that more so that the other films really play with later on to obviously worse effect in just about every case. He's unstoppable. He
Yes.
cannot be killed. There's no way to kill him at all unless yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
No, he cannot be killed thanks to Tommy Jarvis, who had already successfully killed him.
Killed him.
Tommy
Poor
did
Tommy.
it. He successfully killed him and then successfully made him indestructible years after the fact, resurrecting him.
Poor Tommy. We've really really undone his life's work here, haven't we?
Yes, I think the peak of this movie too is the idea of the rivalry between. This is the third time in some iteration that either the idea, the specter, or the actual person, both as a living person, as a psychotic delusion, and as a resurrected zombie, Tommy Jarvis has faced Jason in effect 3 times. And I got to thinking about this, and I don't know if this was true in your neck of the woods as much as it was in mine, but I think my entire youth was spent in rivalries. And that isn't really a concept anymore outside of sports. Like there aren't really brand rivalries. There aren't movie franchise rivalries so much anymore. There aren't like really even like hardcore sports figures rivalries. Like you have like the Bulls and the Pistons, or the Bulls and the Celtics, or the Lakers and the Celtics. Like you don't really quite have that as much as you used to. For instance, in this, my youth, you had the Friday the 13th franchise versus the Elm Street franchise. And there were schisms within the fandom of you were a Freddy guy or gal, or you were a Jason guy or gal. You had Nike versus Reebok. You had McDonald's versus Burger King. You had Nintendo versus Sega. You had WWF versus WCW. You had Coke versus Pepsi. You had Hershey syrup versus Nesquik. And you had all of this sort of like, it was just a part of the zeitgeist, and it was a part of the culture.
Pick a side.
And that's sort of subsided. But when you look at it, at this point from the franchise forward, you can actually see the Friday series and the Nightmare series sort of jockeying for ideas and position. In 84, we introduced to the supernatural slasher, really kind of for the first time the mainstream and Freddy Krueger. We covered that last spooky season. Find that in the archives, horror fans and movie film podcast fans. This time around, I think Nightmare steals a bit of an aspect of this, which is it's the return, the idea of the survivor has to return to face the killer, and the killer has to be returned to his resting place. This comes out in 86. In 1987, we get Dream Warriors.
So when was Dream Warriors? A year later. Okay. Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Definitely. Too similar.
I think we're now in this like nuclear standoff, this arms race between these two franchises where they're going to each other's movies and going, oh yeah, okay, well we're gonna do this, and now we're gonna do that, because they're coming out pretty much every year, every other year at this point.
Yeah, very good point. Had not made that link between Dream Warriors and this film at all. So my hat is off to you. Well, it's not. My hat's on, but figuratively, my hat is off to you. You go into these films to watch gnarly kills, to watch inventive, creative ways for people to be offed. And more often than not, with the cuts that are available through the streaming services, at least here in Australia, they're not the full-fledged films. They clearly and have been heavily edited. And I think the version of this I watched was also edited, because there's a couple of times here I'm like, that looked like it was building so well, and it seems to have cut away too fast. So at the end of the day, when I reveal my score, it's taken a hit for that, because I can't remember whether or not there is a better version of this film out there that just wasn't, someone made the executive decision to edit down, not the MPAA or the MPAA, but like, oh no, we can't have that version on here. Not a director's cut, nothing special. Just, is there a better version of this film out there that has, maybe it's only 45, 60 extra seconds, that I think would make all the difference and elevate this one even higher than it is for me? Because retrospectively in my brain, this was way gorier than I remember, than when I was watching it. Really? That's all we got in that one? So, yeah, that's my big complaint about the film, because everything else is fun. Oh, and the fact that Megan, or Megan as you Americans call it, seems to instantly fall for this guy who, her dad, the sheriff, is very well played, by the way. I thought his David Kagan plays him, sort of see him as a character actor in a bunch of things over the years. He really elevates the acting stakes in this film. You really believe he is the father who's really concerned about his daughter and worried about his town, who, by the way, interesting premise that we haven't touched on. We've renamed the town, and in, well, apparently less than 6 years, we managed to convince all our kids that Jason was just a legend. I'm like, the fuck? How do you not all know this great, crazy murderer which ran around here less than 6 years ago? And
Nightmare on Elm Street would eventually do that.
Yes. But that's a stupid plot point.
Yes.
As is the fact that she throws in with Tommy so fast and is prepared to put herself at high risk, not against Jason, because her dad's saying, this guy is probably a mass murderer. And she's like, I'm going to come rescue you. No worries.
That doesn't bother me, because I think that the actress who's playing Megan is really good. I really like the character of Megan, and it's one of those, it's something that I come to accept, if it's nothing else but teen rebellion. She's sort of coming into her own. Of course, she's going to do the opposite of what her authoritarian dad is telling her to do. It's not that her dad's not right. He is right in the perspective he's coming from. It's just that she is a teenage girl in a small town where nothing ever happens.
Called Forest Glen.
Yeah. I also, here's the thing you got to remember. Yes, there's all these mass murderers and so forth and so on. Let's say whatever. I've so lost the fucking timeline. Let's say 6 years have gone by, right? There's been no Jason sightings whatsoever. Let's argue that these people are 16. I guess they would have been 8, 9, 10, somewhere around that,
Surely they're 18
maybe
or so. These
10 or 12. Yeah, 10 or 12, I guess.
Yep.
When all this shit was going down. There is no internet. This is a small town in the middle of the United States, and Jason's kills have primarily been around the actual camp. So the idea is, and one of the films even shows it, they cross over the fence line. Sandra does, and that's when he's like, "Oh, you're fucking dead." So I think if you're in the greater Crystal Lake area and not actually in the fucking woods around the camp, you've probably never seen the guy. You've never run into him. He's Loch Ness Monster.
Sure. You wouldn't have seen him, but it would be the kind of thing which every year gets dragged out by the media and is all over the place. It's been this many years since the great tragedy, which has now claimed 48,000, whatever it is, 57 lives thus far. And, the whole generation of this town, which has been lost, is now being, all that kind of, that would be everywhere.
Paul, so we live in a society where people believe the earth is flat. And that COVID is a hoax.
Yeah, that is true.
It's not that hard to convince rural yokels in America that things aren't real.
Well, yeah, okay. Can't argue with that. All right, let's move on. We haven't talked about favorite kill. What about favorite kill? What's your best?
The liberals, the radical left killed all those teenagers. It was all that sexual promiscuity and left-handed devil's lettuce cigarettes. What's really interesting was the movie was supposed to have ended with an explanation as to why Jason wasn't cremated. And the idea was that Jason's father, who was Elias Voorhees, would appear. And at the very end, and basically he had paid somebody to not cremate him, but to bury him in an unmarked grave, more or less. And as a way, because he knew that Jason was evil or this, that, whatever. And the idea was that Elias Voorhees was going to be this ongoing character, potentially setting up for the sequels. I don't know if it was ever shot or cast, but it was obviously doesn't make the final cut of the movie. Speaking of cut of the movie, you did talk about the violence and gore. From this point forward, Paul, the edition you're seeing on streaming is more than likely what was actually released in theaters, because this is another one of those ones that was absolutely brutalized by the MPAA. And they all will be from this point forward.
Oh, God, do they ever.
You're right.
I'm just reading something here which I had no idea of. Apparently, this film is considered a direct sequel to the final chapter, and they've retconned A New Beginning. So this Tommy's not the same Tommy.
That's my understanding of it. Yes, but here's the thing: it works either way. I don't think they don't go out of their way to say, "Oh, well, Roy never existed. That was in my head the whole time." Like those events never happened. It's just, you could just go basically straight from, because we don't get really a flashback to 5. You could go straight from 4 to 6 and be like, fuck, 5 never happened. Or it could be like 4, 5, and 6 happened. So it's really up to fans' discretion, I think.
Fair enough. You didn't answer my question though. Favorite kill?
Yeah. It's the RV kill.
Yeah. The face into the wall.
The face into the wall, and then him. We're getting into Freddy territory where the deaths are
this is a bit like Freddy
little
Krueger
punny.
in North Street. Yep.
Yeah, they're a little punny because the guy loves his music and he's always got his headphones on, and so he gets a fucking screwdriver in the ear.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little punny, but okay. But also, it's the shot of then Jason climbing out of a fiery wreckage on top of an RV.
That was pretty amazing for a film like this.
Standing in the fucking smoke.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, all right, this is great. This is great. Yeah, this is great. Is this, Paul, the best Jason?
Look, pretty hard to argue. I hear where you're coming from. I think
most people think Kane Hodder is the better Jason, but is CJ Graham, is he the best Jason? And is this the best Jason design?
The only saving grace of a later film this series is the Jason design in it, so, which kind of takes what's here and exaggerates it a little bit more. So
I know, yes.
So I'd say it's top two for me.
I'm going to go out. I'm just going to say it. I think that he's better than Kane Hodder, and I like this design of all of them the best.
Okay, fair enough. Can't fault you.
This to me, hands down, is the best Jason we've ever had on film. Is Megan, even though Tommy Jarvis, as you said in part 1, is ostensibly our final girl, is Megan the best final girl of the series?
Again, with a big asterisk next to it that is shaped like an adult-sized Tommy who's not 19 and definitely 26.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's better than Trish, that's for sure.
She's better than all of them, and there's certainly no one after her that comes close either.
No. Okay. If you had to give this a score out of 10, what would you give it, and where does it rank for you? For this part 2, we'll rank the entire series at the end of this episode.
Well, we are,
but just out of the last 6,
just out of these last 6.
Yeah.
By a fairly significant margin, this is the best of the 6 films. So we're starting early, and it's all downhill from here, ladies and gentlemen. This is the best of the week. It will be my recommendation for the Vault, or to go into the Vault, or the nominations for. I'm giving this a 7.2 out of 10.
7.2 out of 10. I don't blame you though, because here's the thing: the truncated kills are very jarring, and they
Yes,
actually kind
that's
of
what
break
dropped
the
it for me.
flow of the movie. The movie flows so well, is so well made, and you can tell that the kill gags were so expertly executed that it's almost criminal that they have been cut and not restored. It's really bad, and that's not the fault of the filmmaker. So, all right, moving on.
What about you? What are you giving it?
I already gave mine.
Did you? What was I? I was looking. What did you say?
My score is an 8.0 out of 10, and it is the best of the last 6 of the Friday series. Everybody knows it. But now it's time for us to move on. We're moving on to Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, which was released in 1988 and currently has a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Friday, May 13th. It's Jason versus Tina. Don't go in there! The match made in hell.
There goes the neighborhood.
Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, rated R. Starts Friday, May 13th at a theater near you.
This film was directed by John Carroll.
Well, the skeptics and all the people have a little bit of... Let me do this again.
Oh, it's live, pal.
Sorry.
It's written by Manuel.
You sure?
Bexler.
Let me do this again.
It was written by Manuel Fidelo and Daryl. I can't read my own handwriting here, Paul.
Oh, it's live, pal.
Sorry.
Daryl Henney. It was released May 13th, 1988 on a budget of $2.8 million. It made $19.1 million. This is the first appearance of Kane Hodder as Jason. Psychic teen, Weekend at Bernie's, the waterlogged body of Crystal Lake's favorite son.
Girl with psychic powers accidentally awakens Jason.
Let me do this again.
Jason, who has taken the opportunity to improve himself by now engaging in bloodless mass murdering.
Is this the best poster of the series?
I'd have to look at all the other ones.
The half hockey mask, half girl's face with the glowy and the knife and the psychic abilities, and
looks all right.
It might be if it's not the best poster, I think it might be the second best poster, only after Jason Takes Manhattan. We got to get in the history of this, Paul.
Okay, please do tell me how this all came about.
Oh, Jesus Christ. This is one of the first Friday the 13th films that was produced by a lady. I'm just going to simply quote the Lady Wan of what she says about women and feminism. The Lady Wan says, feminism means women can be bad at things too. This is the first of this in a series that was produced by a woman. Her name was Barbara Sachs, and her entire goal for this film was to make a movie that would be capable of being nominated for an Academy Award.
What?
She approached or wanted to have Federico Fellini direct Part 7 of Friday the 13th. So there would have been a Fellini Friday the 13th.
Get fucked.
She went to all of the top tier directors in Hollywood and in Europe. They all declined to make the movie for very, very obvious reasons. Paul, this movie is not only not worthy of an Academy Award, it's not even worthy of a blockbuster movie award. Now her follow-up was, if we can't do an Academy Award winning level film with Fellini of all people, then we're going to do a Jason versus Freddy crossover movie. But Paramount and New Line could not come to terms on the movie, the rights, what character would get the most screen time, who would win, and contractually, contractually the entire thing fell apart, and of course it would eventually be made.
Well, I understand then what she does next. Let's get Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's.
Weekend at Bernie's hadn't been made yet, Paul.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so by this point, Nightmare 2 has come out in 1985. It makes $30 million. Nightmare 3 comes out in 87, the year before, makes $44 million, as opposed to this movie, which only makes $19 million, and the movie before it, which didn't make much more than that. By this point, Friday the 13th has fallen heavily into second place at the box office. There was no incentive for New Line Cinema to do anything, to really work with Paramount to try to prop up their what was perceived as a flagging, if not failing, franchise. Now, when they can't figure out the Academy Award Best Picture nominee, and it's not a joke. That's what they really wanted to do. They wanted to make an art house Friday the 13th film, basically. When they couldn't do that, when they couldn't do Freddy versus Jason, which, I mean, if those are your top two ideas, we either want to have Federico Fellini make a Friday series. If we can't do that, we'll just do Wolfman meets the Mummy. Like those are two dialectical extremes, Paul. The next one was one of the writers pitched, what if Jason faced Carrie?
What?
And they liked the idea of, because it's a strong female protagonist. And now that Jason's supernatural, we've never seen, because at this point, Freddy Krueger had never faced another being of supernatural ability. So if you can't face Freddy, right? If Jason can't face Freddy, and you're trying to beat the Nightmare series, and Freddy had never faced a supernatural opponent, then you have to have two supernatural opponents. And what if it was Carrie? Well, we don't have the rights to Carrie, and she's dead. So instead, they come up with this character who is essentially Carrie, a very shithouse, generic Kirkland's Best Carrie, and we get this movie that makes no fucking sense, and it's maybe one of the most annoying movies in the entire franchise.
I will say,
tell me everything you want to say about this movie before we move the fuck along.
I will say that I think that concept alone, let's make Jason's no one can match him physically.
Yes.
There's no anyone who's tried dies. You get within range of Jason's arms, you're finished. So a couple of exceptions aside, Tommy Jarvis
and also Paul, at this point, he's fucking teleporting. So you don't even have to get in distance of his arms, because he'll just fucking appear in front of you.
I like the way that's gradually increased the further this series has gone on.
Yeah, we'll get to the next one where it's like the laws of physics no longer apply. Somehow this rotting zombie gets more muscular and huskier the more the series goes on and develops teleportation powers. At a certain point, Paul, he's only going to be bones. He's a waterlogged corpse, and yet he's fucking yoked. It's bizarre.
And obviously, this is where Kane Hodder makes his debut. And this is the Jason that I think looks amazing, with kind of the fish having eaten out parts of his side. His ribs are exposed. So the
spine in the back.
Yeah, I think this is a really great looking Jason, and arguably be my favorite, which elevates the film slightly. As does the concept of, all right, well, let's put this girl up who's got these psychic powers and can defeat Jason, or at least fight him from afar. It's just that everything else about this film fucking sucks.
It's not everything else. It's the girl that they got to be the psychic girl.
Terrible.
Is a horrific actress, and this character is written so annoying that everybody is so unsympathetic. The only person whose side I'm on in this movie is Jason.
Not the really bitchy next girl who likes the guy that inexplicably likes her.
Oh God, fuck. Well, yeah. We'll get to our tropes. I got to say something positive. Because there's only one thing I can say positive about this movie other than the Jason design. And I do think Kate Hodder is a good Jason. He's just not my favorite Jason. This is my favorite opening recap of the entire series.
The shit voiceover summarizing Jason's story.
It's not. I don't think it's a shit voiceover. I think it's a great voiceover.
Yeah, it didn't do it for me. I knew I was in trouble. And then when I saw Henry Manfredini had also shared the music rights to someone, I'm like, oh, that's not a good sign either.
No.
This one's the next one. A rated M, not even R here in Australia. M is like for mature audiences 15 and over.
Yes,
you can watch it whenever you want to. I'm like, what the fuck? What is going on?
Well, it's still rated R in the United States, but honestly, if it were put out today, it'd be a PG-13 horror movie.
Yeah.
There's so little blood.
It's utterly bloodless.
Yeah, it's completely bloodless.
You're right, though. Her performance is horrendously bad. I kind of liked Bernie. He can actually act a bit. What's his name?
Yes.
Terry Kisser. And I didn't understand what his whole motivation was to bring her here. I mean,
what's the end game?
I think his end game is he wants her powers to blossom, and so he can be the first person to prove the existence of telekinetic and powers. But it's very badly described and set up. And what's he hope to get when the mum realizes what's going on? As if they're going to let him continue working with her. It's just the dumbest thing ever.
Well, he said he's going to have her institutionalized, which actually, Paul, in the United States, you didn't need family's approval to do in the late 80s.
Really?
No, yeah, he really could. That was like when he's like, I don't.
All right.
She's like, I'll stop you. I'll stop. He's like, you can't stop me. I'm gonna get her committed. He could have, for real. It wouldn't
That's
be
a bit
until the
frightening, to
very
be
late
honest.
'80s that those laws were repealed. Yeah, he absolutely, as her
All right, I'll take
presiding
that back,
doctor,
and I guess
he could have
his
given
plan
her a
works.
diagnosis and put her in a fucking institution, Hellraiser 2 style, and just experimented on her until
Against the
basically
family's
early
wishes.
90s.
And wow.
Although
Okay.
this is
All right.
supposed to be taking place in the mid 90s, so
Oh, correct.
those
Yes.
laws would have changed. You brought it up. We do get the tropes. We get our bland good guy in this movie. That's Nick. We get the bitchy slut. So we get the combo deal here. That's Melissa, who is also fucking atrocious. We get the geeky weirdo, who is Eddie. We
Melissa
get
hits on just to make Nick jealous.
Yes. Who's basically a dead fuck, but they can't say that because they already did that. We get an extra nerd. We get an extra helping of nerd in this movie because we get the geeky chick whose entire character development is just taking her fucking glasses off.
That's right. And putting makeup on.
Yes. The movie.
And then walking around the forest in high heels. Circa
Yes.
Jurassic Park or Jurassic World.
Yeah. The movie is the one thing that is stupid about the whole doctor subplot is the doctor has seen her move objects around the room via the power of fishing line, which you can clearly see, and is like, oh my God, she has telekinesis. But when she purports to have visions, he's like,
He doesn't believe her.
he's like, no, that's just your trauma speak. It's like, bitch, this woman has pyrokinesis, telekinesis. Telepathy. Why would she not have telepathy? Why would she not be able to prognosticate or see visions of events concurrently as they're happening? Why? Why do you draw the line? And the character even asks, like, you believe I could do all this other stuff. You've seen what I could do. Why don't you believe me about the visions? And it's like, there's no reason why he wouldn't believe that she's having visions. There's no reason whatsoever. And also,
I agree.
When he hides the evidence of like Jason killing that guy, how the fuck does he get that rod or whatever out of the wall and hide it? And then the mom finds a bloodless version of it in his desk drawer. And that's the
so he
clue.
cleans
Like,
it off.
all of this stuff has been happening. But they all go outside at the same time. So when did he have time to hide it?
Very good point. Look, this film makes as much sense as about 60 minutes into it, one guy gets killed opening Christmas presents. I'm like, it's Christmas?
Paul, there's
where did
too
that
many
come from?
they're there for a birthday. It's the cousin's birthday party. And the
he's
bland
opening
good
the other
guy-
person's presents. Is that what he's doing?
Yes, he's opening.
I could have
'cause the
sworn they were under a
couple-
Christmas tree.
No, the couple that gets killed out of the woods where they're fighting.
That are coming.
He's
Yeah.
like, this was a surprise party for you, you asshole, blah, 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 blah. Now everything's ruined. And they get murdered. The good guy is that guy's cousin, and he hates
Cousin,
all
yes,
of
Nick's-
his friends. And then the red shirt who's opening the gifts, he's opening the other guy's presents.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. I take that back, movie. You get a 0.1 raise in my score out of that.
I think this is by far the worst dialogue of any of the Friday the 13th movies up until this point. It feels like an Italian horror movie that was dubbed over into English. It's pretty irredeemable, honestly.
No, look, I agree. I'm not giving it a good score. Don't get me wrong. But it's the undead Jason and how he looks at elevates this one slightly for me. If you took that out of it, if he was a weedy like in the New Beginning Jason, then this one would absolutely be the worst, I think, of the whole franchise. But it doesn't quite get there for me.
Where does it rank of the second half of the franchise, the last 6 films? Or what score would you give it? What rank would you give it? What do you think the best kill is? And you already said this is the best Jason. Give us the rundown.
I don't know if there is a good kill in this movie. I honestly don't think there is, because all of them are
Yes,
muted
there's
and cut
one.
to
It's
shit.
the sleeping bag massacre. Yes, it's
where he
been cut to
smashes.
shit. He doesn't smash her 8 or 9 times like he did in the uncut version. But the idea of him picking up a woman in a fucking sleeping bag and just baseball
bash it.
batting her into a tree. We get a better version of it later, which is almost a parody
Yes.
of this. But still, I think that's the best kill.
I'll concede there, because I didn't like any kill in this film. That probably is the most memorable.
You'll give me that. Okay. I'll make this deal with you. If you give me that the best kill is the sleeping bag, then I will trade Jason Lives design-wise, I still think Graham is a better performer than even
Hodder.
long burn, super crazy long burn sequence that goes on in this movie. Yes, that's very, very impressive. At one point, it was the longest continuous burn in film history because he was actually there's no cut for the point where, there's a fire, then cut, and then somebody comes in and sets him aflame. This was a revolutionary because the fire that they set on the set is actually what ignited him, which is not how it was traditionally done. And then he just burned and burned and burned and burned.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. So props to Kane Hodder for that. I will give you that this is the best Jason. I'll give you this is best Jason if you give me the sleeping bag as best kill.
Done. Deal made. Despite that, and hearing about this wonderful stunt, the best I can do is give it 3 out of 10, which makes it not quite as bad as in the beginning. But for this week, it is my 5th film of the week. There's one worse, according to me.
Well, Binge Lords, get out your binge notebook. For the first time ever, I've graded a movie lower than Paul. He gave it a 3. I give it a 2. I think this is bloodless, tedious, and obnoxious. This is the one that got on my nerves. Not more than any of them, but just about more than any of them. And it's mostly because we said these movies live and die by the charisma of your principal cast and whether you give a shit. I didn't give a shit about and the kills. I didn't give a shit about any of these people, these red shirts, and all the kills are. I mean, this is the theatrical cut could air on Good Friday in Australia in 1999. For me, it is a 2 out of 10. It's my number 5 as well. There is one significantly worse than this.
I think we're going to diverge on what is the worst of this week and the worst of the franchise. But I just want to add, La Park Lincoln is the name of the terrible final girl in this film.
Yes.
Last year, somebody made, Tina Shepherd, a fan film called Roseblood, a Friday the 13th fan film, unofficially continuing the story of Tina Shepherd, played by La Park Lincoln now.
She's not the only person to do that. There was there's Blood in the Snow or something like that. I don't know if it was made by the same people, which was a follow-up of Jason Lives. And they got the deputy who's like the red dot and you bang.
Yep. Didn't he die?
They got him. Did he die? I don't know. I don't think he dies. They got somebody somewhere.
One
of these
jail cell. Yeah.
They had him come back, and they also got Tom Matthews to come back to play Tommy Jarvis one more time. And it was confronting Jason in the Camp Crystal Lake, but it's wintertime.
Nice.
And it's actually very well done for a fan film. I think they had a Kickstarter behind it or whatever. So I don't know if it's the same people behind that one, but because the rights have been tied up so long, the only thing that's kept this franchise alive is fan film. So some of them are actually pretty good. So I wouldn't write that one off instantly. The only reason I write that one off, Paul, is because it's associated with this movie, which is absolute dog shit. Yeah. And maybe in the last 40 years, she's learned how to act. I highly doubt it. All right, moving on to one of the biggest cinematic fuck jobs in movie history. Talk about, as our fucking a guy in the ass without having the goddamn courtesy to give him a reach around. We're talking about Friday the 13th, Part 8. Jason Takes Manhattan, which came out in 1989 and currently has 11% on Rotten Tomatoes.
There's a storm at sea.
You're all gonna die.
And it's blowing terror to the Big Apple. Now, the only safe place to be.
You are dead meat. Yo, man, it's cool. It's cool, man. It's cool.
Is out of town. Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Rated R. Now playing at theaters everywhere.
This movie was directed and written by Rob Hedden. It was released July 28th, 1989 on a budget of between $5 and $5.8 million. The most expensive film in the franchise yet. And a box office return of $14.3 million. Make it officially the poorest performer in the franchise's history. This is also the triumphant return of Kelly Hu, last seen in X2. Okay, for this, option number one was John Carroll Beaker wrote essentially a movie that was like the return of Tina Shepard, where it would be they'd have a rematch against each other, Zombie Jason versus Tina again. Speaking of your favorite actress of all time, option two, Lar Park Lincoln wrote her own screenplay.
Oh, God.
That, having read or having heard, I should say, what it was essentially Dream Warriors, where she would be an adult counselor who would go back and find other kids who may have had psychic abilities, who had some tie to Jason and blah, blah, blah. And then there was option three, which was that all of the events of this were a dream, because the guy who played Nick wrote
this, yeah.
So he was going to make
with his character as the killer.
Yes, it was all his. So the version, his part 8 was going to be all of part 7 was his dream, and it turned out he was the main character. The balls to be like, amazing. Actually, I've written a sequel to this movie. And it turns out I was a side character, but only in my own dream. But I wake up from my dream, and now I'm the main character.
Unbelievable.
The absolute narcissism and the fucking absolutely tone deaf. That is one of the all-time great Hollywood stories. That is, to me, that is up there with Menachem Golem pitching a movie to Clyde from Any Which Way But Loose. Paul, this guy wrote a sequel where it retconned and made himself. It was all my dream.
And
the other movie starring other people was all a dream, and it was me the whole time, and I'm the killer.
Gee, I can't imagine why Paramount didn't go with that one. Holy crap. He went on to apparently star in Days of Our Lives for a whole bunch of years, so that's his big claim to fame.
Oh, fuck me. Okay. So this Rob Hedden guy, he had a couple of different ideas. One was the idea that it was going to be Jason gets aboard a cruise ship, and he's hiding up on the bowels of a cruise ship, and different crews of people have to go into the darkness and face him. It was going to be essentially aliens on a cruise ship.
Mm-hmm.
His other idea, which is actually the only good idea so far, was somehow, some way, Jason Voorhees makes his way from New Jersey to New York and is in Manhattan, of all places, and goes on a massacre through Manhattan, sort of chasing down the last survivors of Camp Crystal Lake. There's a version of that movie, especially in the late 80s New York, Paul, where it would almost be what the Terminator was in Los Angeles. It would be Jason Voorhees as a Terminator-like figure chasing our protagonist, a man and a woman, chasing them through New York and killing anybody who gets in his way. And that movie could have fucking ruled.
Well, yeah.
Grimy, filthy, late 80s Manhattan with the last survivors of Crystal Lake running for their lives, thinking they're safe because they're in the big city, and somehow this fucking guy is relentlessly, mercilessly stalking them and interacting with the denizens and the degenerates of late 80s New York before mob boss Giuliani came in and committed all kind of human rights violations to clean up the town so M&M's could put up a gift shop. I think that movie is fantastic. Even though this movie had an incredible budget for the Friday series, they cut the budget before it went to production, and they had to split the difference. And so instead of doing Jason Goes to Manhattan, they did Jason is aboard a quote-unquote cruise ship, which is a fucking steam, like, it's a fucking tugboat. Jason on a tugboat pretending to be a cruise ship with all of about 5 high school graduates. And then he's in Vancouver, very clearly Vancouver. All of a sudden, Camp Crystal Lake is in Canada and has fucking mountains all around it. Mountains. And apparently, whatever tributary goes into Camp Crystal Lake connects you, I guess it's the Hudson River, connects you to the Atlantic fucking Ocean, and you can go to New York. This landlocked lake where kids went to camp apparently is fed by the Hudson River. Eat shit. And apparently the river is so deep, you get a fucking giant steamship through the river into New York. And apparently all 11 kids that go to this, I guess it's a private school or a preparatory school, a boarding school, I don't know. All 11 graduates party their ass off on this fucking bleak ass, hideous, ugly, absolutely flavorless ship where you have some of the worst kills of the series, some of the worst kills of the franchise. And then what's not filmed in the back alleys of Vancouver or a set somewhere is we get all of maybe 10 minutes in actual Manhattan. And the shot of Jason in fucking Times Square, late 80s Times Square with the Batman logo for the movie that was about to come out is so awesome. Wet, soupy, weird Jason who I guess walked and somehow kept up with the ship.
Yeah. No, well, did he? Yeah. Because they were rowing, right? So the ship.
Yes.
So like you said, we get both films here. We get alien style. I don't understand how it's alien style. If they're in the alien maybe style on the bows of a ship. They're trapped in there and being picked off one by Jason in very silly, stupid kills. Mostly. Yes. Once again, this film has been neutered beyond belief and it's ridiculous. Through his shenanigans, he manages to sink the ship, put it on fire, and it's going to sink the ship. Yeah. So the survivors get in a rowboat and row the rest of the way down whatever Hudson River or whatever it is, and happen to stumble across New York, and then he emerges from the river
simultaneously
immediately after. Yeah. Well, what?
So did he swim or did he walk the entire way? Did he walk the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean?
How does he know which way to go? What is this narrowing direction he has? And this is the film I think you were alluding to earlier, in particular, where he can just appear anywhere at any point in time.
Kelly Hu. When he kills her in the fucking disco ballroom, and then literally she just turns and he's there, and she turns and he's there, and it's like, how does he even catch up with her? One, two, how does he end up in front of her? I mean, it just doesn't. He appears wherever he's needed to kill.
Well, what about what's his on the streets of Vancouver, aka New York, and he's at one scene killing these two denizens of the night who are going to rape the main character, shoot her up with drugs and rape
two
her.
Heroin addicts, yes,
yeah, and then 2 seconds later is standing in front of a car, which is however far. Like, it's just, this film makes no pretense of making any sense whatsoever. It doesn't want to. It doesn't care. And yet somehow this was the best idea that they had, and they with $5 to $5.5 million could make. This is Jurassic World Dominion levels of disappointing to me, to use a recent film. Dinosaurs have escaped into the world and are running rampant. Oh, no, they're not. About 11 people have been killed. That's all that's happened over the last couple of years since this happened.
And dinosaurs are not the focus. Locusts are the focus.
Locusts are. You've got Jason, this undead killing machine, who if you're an adult and you get within arm's reach of him, he wipes you out left, right, and center. But somehow in this film, he's so obsessed with Rennie and what's his name, Sean. He ignores everybody else that he comes across unless you happen to try to bar his path.
Even then he won't kill you. For the most part, he just like pushes you out of the way.
Pushes you out of the way or throws you through a window, because of course he does, because he hates glass.
Yes, of course.
And there's plenty of opportunities here to destroy a bit of glass. So well done, Jason. There's your fetish ticked off this film as well. It's bafflingly terrible. It is so disappointing. It's one hurt my heart. Like, Jason needs a holiday. So did I after getting to this point in the series. I was really questioning my life decisions.
I don't have a good logical reason for why Jason Voorhees would find himself in Manhattan. That's the hardest part, is getting him out of that camp and getting him to Manhattan. But if you could come up with a smart way to get him there, again, especially late 80s, graffiti-ridden punk, the streets over, like, I'm talking about 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, New York, where it's all street punks and street toughs and boom boxes and graffiti and fucking switchblades and mohawks and crazy shit, and drug addicts and heroin. And there's like nods to all that. Like you said, there's the heroin using rapists and whatnot, but all of it takes place in very obvious sets that are supposed to be back alleys. It feels so small. But the idea of him just free roaming, having free roam of Manhattan, the scene of Jason Voorhees, zombie Jason on a subway, should have been fucking awesome. Especially, this is not that far removed from when the guy shot a bunch of people on the subway in New York because it was so crime ridden. And, you know, the idea of, you know, Jason interacting with the dregs of late 80s society as New York is collapsing down around everybody. It was just visually should have been interesting. You could have come up with amazing kills. And instead, we're just locked in on Rennie and her Uncle Charles. Again, here we have Rennie, who she doesn't spend the back half of the movie drunk. She spends it high on the dragon of heroin, dope sick, and is directly responsible because she tries to run over a heroin-induced hallucination of Jason and kills her aunt or teacher or whatever the fuck in a fiery fireball. Jason had nothing to do with that. He wasn't even around at that point. And they don't even respond.
They don't even react. It's like,
the fact that Rennie killed this woman. It's strange. Uncle Charles, his entire idea is once the 4 survivors of the cruise ship make their way to fucking Manhattan, he's like, we need to split up and find the police. But they never pick a point or a place to reconvene or to meet up.
And he's like, okay. And then here's the other bit, which makes zero sense.
Let's go.
So the uncle, she can't remember why she's so frightened of water. Turns out, said uncle shoves her in the middle of Crystal Lake.
Yes.
And basically leaves her to drown, thinking it's literally sink or swim. But it's boy Jason who's down there and grabs onto her. And so now she has visions of child Jason throughout the film, which amount to absolutely fucking nothing.
Well,
how do we have boy Jason down there? What's going? What is this film trying to say?
To pad out what is clearly not a real movie, and is clearly not a script, and to add Nightmare on Elm Street level visuals and surrealism to it, we have a movie with 2 Jasons. You get hydrocephalic young Jason with a deformed head in his tidy whities for some reason. It's not swimming trunks. And you get a grown zombie Jason. One is a vision in Rennie's head. And yes, her Uncle Charles, who is, for the life of me, every time I look at him, he looks like the guy from Lost in Space, but it's not him.
Oh, yeah.
He is like, if you don't swim, Jason couldn't swim. He drowned in Crystal Lake. You'll drown too. And in fact, he's still down there and he'll grab you. If you don't swim, you got to swim, Rennie. Swim, Rennie. And also, Jason drowned in 1957. We're now far into the 90s now because this takes place even after New Blood. So am I to believe that she was learning how to swim in the 60s? Also,
it just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. She's too young to have been back at Crystal Lake all those years ago. And on top of that, on top of everything, we've established the fact the fucker didn't drown. He never drowned in Crystal Lake. He got out of the lake because he was then alive in the woods. So why the boy in the lake was a dream? It was trauma. He wasn't really a boy in the lake. He doesn't become a lake zombie until Tommy Jarvis chains him down there. He was a zombie. Here's the whole thing, Paul. He was a fucking zombie before he ever actually drowned.
So ridiculous.
And they're like, oh no, actually he was a boy and he actually did drown, but then he came back and he wasn't a zombie, but then he became a zombie again. This movie fucking blows. And so it's not just a spooky story that he tells her. It's actually, he really is down there, and he grabs her feet, and now she has this, after killing her teacher in a fiery crash, and all of her friends are dead, and everybody's dead, and she's high on heroin. Suddenly her trauma gets unleashed as the fiery wreckage of her teacher's police car. They also saw a cop get brutally murdered, ripped out of the cop car.
Yes.
No reaction. He's the most Canadian cop I've ever heard in my entire life. He has the thickest Canadian accent, and he's supposed to be in fucking Manhattan. She drives a cop car at 100 miles an hour into a fucking brick wall. She spends more time reacting to the fire in a toxic waste puddle, where she then has a flashback, cross-dissolve to her childhood, than she does her teacher, who is at the same time she's fucking daydreaming about her fear of water, is burning alive feet away from her. Every time this movie gets going, they fucking interrupt it for either some kind of ghost Jason crying out for help. How is the child Jason a ghost if the body of Jason is a fucking zombie? Or some needless flashback, which makes no sense in any timeline ever, anywhere.
We've nailed everything that's partly wrong, or just about everything's wrong with this film, other than everything else, which includes the production values, the acting, the performances, the characterizations. This film is god-awful in every way, shape, and form.
Is it a visual pun, Paul, that the heroine is on heroin?
I think you're giving this film way too much credit. They just went, what do people in New York do? They shoot up heroin. All right, she has to run across the worst filth that's possibly imaginable. Oh, we'll make her get shot up with heroin, which, by the way, after she kills her teacher, who's been caring for her more than her actual uncle does, and the cop gets killed at the same. She's then running fine, no worries, through the rest of the finale of the film. So she shakes that off real well.
In part one, I asked the question, what if they had lived? And for Rennie, when I imagine, what if she had lived through all of this? Because she does. But what if she had lived, and what would her life be? Well, by 1993, she's dead of AIDS because they used the dirtiest fucking needle I've ever seen to shoot her up. This woman is dead from full-blown AIDS within a handful of years of this.
That means she's probably given it to Scott as well. So,
fuck him. He's dead too. Paul, what's the best kill of the movie?
There's
only one.
The hot coal stone in the chest. Come on. That was good.
The best kill of the movie is Rock'em Sock'em Julius.
Oh, fuck.
When he fucking punches Jason, all the way across a roof, and his knuckles are bloody, and he's panting, he goes, fine, give me your best
Take
shot.
your best shot. Yeah.
And he fucking literally knocks his block off, and his head rolls into the dumpster. It's so stupid. You have to love it.
Well, no, it's so stupid I laughed, but it wasn't. It was just so dumb. I'm like, that's this movie to an absolute fucking T. Whereas the other one was, I mean, that guy's pain is over in a second. This other bloke gets a hot coal stoving in his chest and put it. I laughed at that one a lot in a more, that must have hurt sadistic kind of way. So I see where you're coming from. And I did actually like that. At least that character gave Jason a few licks, but.
Is this the best Jason? We've already answered that. No,
definitely not.
Is this the best final girl? Is Rennie your favorite final girl of the last 6 of the Friday films?
No, I couldn't work out where I'd seen her before. It turns out she played, I guess, the young version or the cheap version of Rene Russo in like Major League 3. So that's her other claim to fame. She beat out Pamela Anderson and Elizabeth Berkley for this role. Can you imagine how different the world would be if Elizabeth Berkley was in this movie and not Showgirls?
Well, honestly, she could have been in this and then later Showgirls, because this is a movie only came out in 89. Showgirls is 96. Well, I guess this movie is set in, 97, 98, 99, when you're basing the fucking timeline. This is it. And that's what I love about it. It's very clearly, like, again, I know nobody gives a shit about the continuity, but we're marketing the Batman film before it's ever released, but this movie is supposed to take place in the goddamn 90s. Fuck out of here. I guess it could have been a Batman sequel, whatever. I give this thing a 2.5 out of 10.
Oh, I also give it a 2.5 out of 10.
Yeah, but my 2.5 places it above The New Blood.
Whereas see, this is where we get different. Yes. This is the worst of the week for me. This is my worst film of the week by a fair bit.
Hell fucking no. This is the worst take you've ever had. I know where this is going. This is my number 4 for the week. This is the worst take you've ever had in the history of binge movies. You've talked about 400 fucking films on here, and this one you are dead wrong on. Of course, I'm talking about Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Spoilers, it wasn't. Which was released in 1993. I watched the unrated cut, and 16% of Rotten Tomatoes is too fucking generous.
Horror has many faces, but pure evil wears only one. And this is your final chance to see it. Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, rated R. Starts Friday, August 13th at a theater near you.
This movie is directed by Adam Marcus with a screenplay by Jay Hewley and Dean Lorey. The only thing you need to know about them is they were like friends of the producer's kid, or one of them was a producer's kid or whatever. They had no business writing this fucking movie. The story is with all these same fucking losers. By this point, Paramount had sold it to New Line, so now this is the first New Line Friday film to be released. It was released August 13th, 1993, in a budget of $3 million, so they cut it by 2. It still only made $15.9 million, and that's too much fucking money. Stoner teen delinquents wrote horseshit to send Jason and audiences to hell.
Betsy Palmer had Buck Rogers, Colonel Wilma Daring as a child, meaning Jason has a sister. And if that makes no sense, don't you worry, neither does this film.
This is absolutely shit director, absolutely shit direction. This is the visual style of a big budget 90s porno. This movie looks like Baywatch, which was the Baywatch porno ripoff, which I have seen way too many times, scrambled on cable. Trust me.
Yo, Sean, Matt, radios are still down. I can't find Barbie and Nancy. Find them. Their assignment is now your assignment.
Jason is goofily, bellowing out like fucking Darth Vader or Revenge of the Sith. No! The opening sequence when they're fucking shooting him up and he's going, it's like, is this a parody? Is this a parody of Friday the 13th? Because even if it's a parody movie, it's not funny. This entire movie borders on a direct-to-TV cable comedy series. The movie looks and feels and is tonally like the Weird Science television show that aired on the USA Network. This is not fit for theatrical release. It's not scary. It is so stupid. Nothing is explained. None of these characters make any sense. It is the Freddy's Dead of the Friday franchise. The Creighton Duke character is terrible, unexplained,
you're not going to shit on Creighton
purposeless. The entire retcon of, the body, that isn't Jason, that's just meat. Jason's a slug worm that's inside of him. That doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. And it doesn't. If it's just meat, then how come every time the slug worm gets into a body, it looks like fucking zombie Jason? Why, if it's just fucking meat, why would he come back in zombie? If he's reborn, why would he be reborn as a zombie? Why would he be reborn looking exactly the way he did at the beginning of the movie? It fucking sucks. The idea that his head is some sort of swollen pumpkin with a tiny mask fucking stuck into it, which they carry that over into the next movie, is so obscene and absurd. This takes the worst features of the bullshit Halloween sequels we reviewed and the worst features of the bullshit Nightmare on Elm Street sequels we reviewed, and it wraps all up into a franchise that is dead on its fucking feet. This movie is dead on arrival. This is anti-vault material. It is a 0 out of 10. 0 out of 10. This movie is garbage. This movie fucking blows.
All right, time to leap to this film's defense. If by defense you can say it still fails. This film is not a good film. I'm not defending it's a good film. It is However, a guilty pleasure of mine, which I have talked about on several podcasts over the years and tried to defend it. This is the first Jason film, Friday the 13th film I got to see at the cinemas. I took my then girlfriend. We didn't last. Can you imagine why? Anyway, to see it, she sat through it.
You didn't last in a theater, you didn't last in bed, or you didn't last as a couple?
As a couple.
Oh, I see.
We saw the whole thing. I find this film to be everything that you've said, yet I give it not a pass. That would be too strong and generous a term. I have legitimate fondness for this movie. I think it decided to do this absolutely off-the-wall idea that, unlike the Halloween films that you're referencing, aspects of it kind of work. This is totally a ripoff of a Richard Lamond novel called
Flesh.
Believe it or not. So he was I don't know if you've ever heard of Richard Lamond. He died. Literally, this is the description. No one had seen anything like it before. A slimy, mobile tube of putrefying flesh and an obscene, probing mouth. But the real horror is not what it looks like, or even what it does to you when it invades your flesh, but what it makes you do to others.
Flesh.
They've just read that book and gone, let's just give Jason a story now that explains, well, not really explains how, or explains how he's lived this long and stick him into different people's bodies. And I get it. I get why the purists hate this because, I mean, Kane Hodder is in the film more in his one-line cameo at the start of the film as one of the security guards at the morgue than he is actually as Jason.
Which is not funny.
I thought that was pretty amusing.
No.
But there was a lot of kills. I must have seen the unrated cut at the cinema because, my memory is way bloodier and gorier than I've seen before. Yes, you're right. Jason should never vocalize. That was a mistake. Can't defend that. But in terms of some of the kills in this film, I had a lot of fun with it. I think the guy who's the lead, he's not bad in this movie. He's got a little bit of charisma. Clearly you don't agree, but that's all right.
He is a absolute fucking dork in a Letterman jacket. It's like they cast him to be the bland good guy, but yet he's doing like a weird George Costanza accent from fucking Seinfeld. You come out here to smoke a little dope. You come out here and get slotted and have a little premarital sex. And yet he's a fucking
and then
dork.
Hot woman invites him.
Yeah, he's a fucking.
Like,
he's a fucking dork in a Letterman jacket. But he's not in high school anymore. But he got a girl in high school pregnant. Like none of these relationships make any sense. We're just really, thrown into the middle as if we already know who these people are. The movie is visually, it's like vomit on the screen. It is visually hideous to fucking look at. The plot description the plot description you just read is fucking Shivers, and you hated Shivers. You shit all over it. You said it was a terrible movie.
That's
the
true.
Closest film equivalent to this movie is a movie that is actually far superior to this in every single way. It's a film called The Hidden. Go out of your way to watch The Hidden and never fucking watch this. This is dog shit. This is 100%, Paul. You hated Freddy's Dead. This is Freddy's Dead all over again. We're 9 movies in and we're going to suddenly explain the backstory. And instead of it being mystical sperm, Jason that come and get Freddy and make him a dream genie, Jason is the mystical sperm. He is a fucking glob of cum that goes up his dead sister's vagina to reanimate himself as somehow again reanimated as a fucking zombie in the same clothes. He's in the same fucking clothes. So apparently he's so magical he can reanimate a fucking hockey mask and clothes and a goddamn machete. Creighton Duke. Who the fuck is Creighton Duke? And he has to understand the dagger is the dagger from Evil Dead. The Pythagorean theorem dagger, whatever the fuck it's called. Yep. The Necronomicon is on the fucking
there.
I get it. Jason's a deadite now, and isn't that funny? And isn't that clever? No, it fucking isn't. It's fucking dog shit. This movie
I'm not being able to defend against this. I can hear the hatred. The 0 out of 10 though, and the nomination for the anti-vault. Wow.
0.
No, I again, have a certain fondness for this movie. I'm going to give it a 4.6 out of 10, and it is my
your
fourth
fucking mind.
Best
You are out of your fucking mind. A 4.6, folks. If you don't know who Paul is, a 4.6 in Paul's world, you might as well. That's like a 9 in my world. That like he grades movies so harshly. This is a man who gave Sunset Boulevard, 2.5 stars. He's going to give this piece of shit 4.6 out of 10. You're off your rocker. I did see the unrated cut, and here's what I'll say about the unrated cut. Okay,
good kills.
In the unrated cut, the Debbie and tent kill is way more graphic. Okay, how graphic can we get here, Paul? What's my podcast? It's pretty graphic.
You tell me.
You think Binge Movies is graphic as a podcast? You think it's pretty explicit?
No, I wouldn't say it overly is. I think.
You think it crosses the line of decency?
No.
I'm about to. Movie sex scenes are entirely unrealistic. I'm not even talking about porno. I'm talking about Hollywood-produced sex scenes. They're completely unrealistic because they include no foreplay, no attention to the woman whatsoever. Guys just slide right in. It always just fits right in like a glove, and there's no problem.
Yep, no awkwardness.
If you got a low-key big hog, you can't just slide right in there. It doesn't work that way. There's a warm-up process. There is
foreplay.
Yeah, the foreplay. There's attention to detail that must be taken. And sometimes things have to be shifted and spread a little bit to make things work. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
This is the only sex scene in any Hollywood movie. Again, I watched the unrated cut, so I don't know if this is in the theatrical cut, where the woman, there's no foreplay shown that I remember, maybe some nipple stuff, but the woman actually hand manipulates her crotch area to make the receiving of the male more comfortable for herself.
It's progressive.
Freddy Goes to Hell, Jason's Final Friday, whatever the fuck this is, might be the most anatomically correct sex scene in movie history. I can only assume it's because they just had people really having sex because this movie is junk. It's a porno. Have you ever seen the movie Body Melt, which I think is set in New Zealand or Australia?
I think it's Australian. Yeah, I did. So I saw it at the cinema.
You saw Body Melt in the theaters?
Yeah, in our little local alternative cinema.
Was it a re-release or do you see it back in the day?
No, I'm thinking it's like 91, 92, 93. Yeah, so yep.
Holy shit, Paul. You're the only person on earth who saw that in theaters.
Go us.
There is a body melt scene in this when Josh, the cop who was Jason, pukes out Jason into somebody else's mouth, and the body decomposes and he fucking melts into the ground. It's already a fairly impressive visual effect. It's the only impressive visual effect in the movie. But the uncut version, it just goes on and on and on, and he just goes to complete goop. And it's really actually fucking disturbing. So between the anatomically accurate spread job of the sex scene moment and the moment of a guy turning into goo, those are only two good things in the entire film. This movie, bucket blows, 0 out of 10. Best kill is Josh. This is the worst Jason, not just of the 6.
Yes, I agree.
But maybe
5.
the worst of all of them.
Because he's not on screen, because Jason is jumping around in between.
Even when he is, the design where the hockey mask is so small and his head is like a fucking pumpkin sucks. It sucks.
I don't disagree.
Is this the best
Jason.
final girl? No, it isn't.
No, you know what? Who is the best final girl who just gets killed off is suddenly the friend who was babysitting the baby who suddenly turns into an action heroine by pulling out a shotgun. I wanted to see that film. Where did she get that training from?
Becomes Linda Hamilton. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. 0 out of 10. Anti-vault. I'm nominating for the anti-vault. Paul, go ahead.
Right, that's it. I keep joking about it. I've got your page up here. I'm joining so I can vote against that move. That's ridiculous. Click and join right now.
Looking for even more unique and creative movie content? Become a patron. Choose between 3 levels and you'll get benefits like a personalized membership card, exclusive shows, early instant reactions to new releases, episode voting power, live streams, and more. Join today. Patreon.com/binge movies.
I'll believe it when I see it. You gave it a what out of what? A
4.6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Ready? You get a notification when someone joins?
I don't have it up. I will,
because
but I'm here talking to you. I'm in the moment. I'm living in the moment.
Wait a second, because boom. All right, I'm in. I'm stopping that shit cold.
All right. Well, you gave it a what out of what? It's your what? Remind me.
4.6 out of 10. It is my fourth best film of the week.
Fucking blows. Anti-vault, here it comes. All right, let's move along to basically a decade later, 2002's Jason X, which has 19% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Coming soon.
He is an unstoppable killing machine.
What the hell is going on?
Jason Voorhees!
Guys, it's okay. He just wanted his machete back. Uh-oh.
He's been modified. Oh, you think? You guys might want to run.
Jason X.
I don't think he's out there.
Why don't you stick your head out and have a peek?
Rated R, coming soon.
This film was directed by Jim Isaac. I was not Jason Isaac. That'd be real fucking weird. Jim Isaac was written by Todd Farmer. It was released November 21st.
Man, why don't I say it fucking right?
It was released November 2001 in Spain, and then April 28th, 2002 in the United States. Folks, I've said this 20 bajillion times. If a U.S. released movie is released nearly 6 months to a year prior in a country that is not known for getting movie releases before it is released domestically, something is wrong. It's a tax shelter. It's a money laundering scam. The mafia is involved. It's a cartel operation, or the movie fucking blows. We'll see what Paul thinks of Jason X, because he just gave the last one a 4.6, which is just dumbfounding to me. On a budget of between 11 and 14 million. Okay, that difference between 11 and 14 million dollars is $3 million. That's the money that came from a drug lord in Spain. That's the money they can't account for, and why it had to be released in Spain first. It's hard to argue. It only made $17.1 million at the box office. Synopsis is really simple. Jason goes to fucking space.
Having conquered all before him in current times on planet Earth, Jason takes his killing spree to space in the future, because what else could this franchise do?
Do you think Elon Musk named his rocket ship SpaceX after Jason X?
Yes.
Can we just start with this? It is the final appearance of Kane Hodder as Jason, but it is also the debut as an actor of who, Paul?
Is it the debut of David Cronenberg?
David Cronenberg, of all people, appears in this movie as Dr. Wimmer and is in the first 10 minutes of the film and gets brutally murdered by Jason Voorhees. Because this movie, very clearly, I don't know what it is. It has to be their cameras, their film stock, the way they light stuff. If a movie is produced in Canada, it looks like Canada. It feels like Canada. Canada has a very specific, almost televisual quality to it. High production level TV show. But that's what this movie looks like. It looks like a very high level sci-fi original movie.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Just to clarify, you're saying David Cronenberg's acting debut on Binge Movies, right?
Debut. Yes.
Okay, good.
If you want to know about David Cronenberg, the films he's directed, Paul and I have covered The Brood, and we did an entire separate retrospective on David Cronenberg, which is was a very well received episode. So I would say it's one of my top 10 favorite episodes I've ever done.
Well, that's very flattering. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed that discussion as well, because it was about mostly good films, which is a rarity for me on this show.
Since when can Jason regenerate? Isn't he a zombie? Zombies don't regenerate.
They don't. They've added this level of things. And I think it's actually a pretty good idea. As if you hated the wormy thing in number 9, well, what about the fact that somehow through some supernatural, mystical, whatever it is power, he's not able to die. And this explains why he can be blown up, exploded, shot, whatever else, and he always comes back. I like it. I think it's good. Regeneration for Jason is a thing which, by this stage in the franchise, absolutely works.
I actually don't hate the idea of, hey, there's something genetically off with him, which might even explain his deformity. right? That they play fast and loose with because sometimes he's deformed and sometimes he's not. And sometimes he's a zombie and he gets covered in toxic waste that's released at midnight every night in storm sewers in Manhattan, and it washes away the zombie flesh to find a little boy underneath.
We forgot to mention that awesome part of that film, yes.
Is he a ghost or is he a little boy trapped in a rotting zombie's body? We don't know. Also, okay, can we go back to that for a second? When the masticated flesh gets washed away by the toxic waste tsunami that happens in the storm sewers of New York every night. First of all, they're not in sanitary sewers. They are very clearly in storm sewers. Storm sewers handle stormwater, not sewer. So you can't walk around most actual like septic shit sewers. You can't do it. You can walk around in certain places, storm sewers, but they're not the same thing. Movies always tend to confuse those two things. On top of that, if they just had a fucking tidal wave of toxic waste released into the storm sewers of New York every night, so many people would be dead. It makes no sense that this guy's just like, every night at midnight, they release the toxic waste. And it's like, what? What are you talking about? Anyway, it washes the zombie off of Jason not before he cries out in a child's voice, "Mommy, help!" and then starts profusely vomiting water for no reason whatsoever.
I just don't get it.
No, wait, when it washes away, when the toxic waste finally subsides, and basically naked, chubby little boy is there in the water shivering. Rennie and her boyfriend leave a child in the sewers. Is Jason is child really Jason there? Really there?
It's a very good call.
Or is he a ghost? Know. Because if he's really there, they left him in the sewers to die again.
I'd have left him there too. It's all his fault.
No, it's not child Jason's fault. It's adult Jason's fault. This is your chance to. Rennie could
tried to drown
him.
you. He tried to drown her at that point in time.
As a zombie. Now he's a child again.
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
He goes from being a child again, who's left in the sewers of Manhattan to be raised by a rat that knows Kung Fu, to then somehow getting his ass back to Crystal Lake as a full-grown man zombie, who then actually is a slug. And then we go to the future of 2008 in a movie that was shot in 2002, and he's not a slug, deadite from fucking Themyscira or wherever the fuck. He is from the Book of the Dead. He is actually just a mutant, basically. He is an X-Men who can regenerate. He's Wolverine. He is Wolverine's Canadian. This is the New Jersey version of Wolverine. And that's their explanation. I don't hate it, but we're so far along into them just shoveling bullshit on top of bullshit on top of bullshit on top of this character that I'm like,
I think you just got to go with it by this point in time. It doesn't.
So you're saying this is like James
jumping forward so far into the future, at least deals with our problems with the timeline, because now we're out of the timeline completely. So
yes,
okay, we're almost resetting here in a way, because I had this film been a success, what were they going to do? Like this, you don't have anywhere to go after this film, as far as I can tell.
No, but here's the thing: it's set so far in the future. You could always, any movie you make that takes place before this is in the past.
Oh, could wake him up beforehand.
You make after this that is sets in the past. He hasn't gone to space yet.
On that timeline. Oh god, can you imagine that? The multiverse of Jason.
Well, Jason goes full Interstellar by the end of this. Yeah.
And we're still not sure he actually dies at that last bit when he gets, basically eaten up by the Earth's or whatever planet it is.
Oh, no. I don't think the idea is that he's dead. I think the idea is he's going to kill horny teens on a new planet.
On Earth 2. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he lands at Camp Crystal Lake at Earth 2. A couple of horny teens stumble.
What are the odds?
What are the odds? Speaking of horny couples, we get a trope. We get a horny couple here, but this time they're a horny couple in space.
Way hotter. So much hotter.
Yeah.
who can't keep their hands off each other. And the film then does something a little bit interesting, which is it actually kills off arguably the most attractive cast member first, which is not something you see very often.
The other thing it does is it gets the sex out of the way because they fuck real early in the movie, and then there's no more fucking, really no more nudity. Yeah. So it's like, okay, we gotta give you this. Other than there's like the gag nudity that happens a little bit later, but it's like, okay, we got to do the trope. Here it is, and all the other nudity is a joke. The robot nudity where she takes her top off and her nipples fall off.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I just love premarital sex. Ooh, when it's smoked up, but doesn't have premarital sex. I love
cool. That was a good moment.
Sex. It's a very good moment. Yeah, I don't know. This is here's what okay.
This made me laugh. Okay, can I jump in?
Go ahead.
This made me laugh. So this is set in the year 2455, right? They established that at some point during the course of the film.
It starts at 2008. A female scientist, Jason, gets loose. They're going to put him in cryostasis to study his DNA. He gets loose. He kills everybody, including David Cronenberg. He machetes the female scientist who's against the entire idea of even keeping him around at all. But they can't kill him. They've tried everything to kill him. And then he machetes through the cryo chamber door, which she tricks him into getting into, guts her, but then she's frozen with him.
Shallowly.
And then 400 years goes by. Yes.
Yeah.
She's discovered
they make a
by
point of saying
high school kids on a class trip.
Is it high school kids? I think it's a college kids with a professor.
College kids on a class trip to find junk on the old Earth. I don't know, but they find Jason.
Some kind of yeah. So they say it's 455 years later.
Yeah.
And maybe I missed it. Maybe it wasn't 2455. So maybe it's actually 2053. Anyway, regardless of that small, slight timeline thing, because that's this series to a T. Everyone on, well, not everyone. That's Jason. That's the Jason. 455 or 470 years after. They remember this guy, but 5 years later in Jason Lives, no one remembers anything. Okay, that's interesting.
There's absolutely no chance that 450 years in the future, anybody knows who Jason Voorhees is. A guy who killed, they say, oh, he killed over 200 people. He killed over 200 teenagers at a camp in New Jersey 500 years ago. Nobody knows who the fuck this guy is.
No, absolutely not. So that made me laugh a bit. But anyway, fine. We're getting behind that. I think this film, it reaches for the stars, no pun intended. It just absolutely swings for the fences. It does not give any shit about falling short. The special effects are exactly what you expect from a 2001 relatively low budget production, even though it's very high by this franchise's standards. But I think the creativity here, the ideas here, like making Jason be reformed and recreated into this Uber Jason, this basically, now he absolutely is a Terminator. They're not even hiding
They're
this shit anymore.
nanobots. It's nanobots plus Jason equals Jason X, aka Uber Jason. Yes.
I think that's brilliant. I wish we had a lot more Uber Jason than what we actually got. Like, I think it's almost that they fumbled the potential for that to have a lot more fun with it than the 10 minutes maybe we got at the very end of the film. But that's a small knock on what is otherwise, I think, a pretty good Friday the 13th film with some good kills. Again, the version I saw seemed to clearly be cut especially towards the latter parts of the film. Some of the kills are very circumspect in the editing. I have to imagine that's another MPA effort. But there's a couple of brilliant kills in this movie, and one of probably the greatest Jason kill of all the films put together, in my opinion.
I know the one you're talking about. I think that, oh God, okay. How do I feel about this movie? By this point, this franchise has been run into the ground. we have to go. We have to remember this didn't start with very much. There's not much really here to this franchise, and somehow this is our 9th, 10th entry. 10th is our 10th entry
into
this fucking franchise about a woman trying to get revenge for the death of her malformed son. And now we're in space. It's 500 years in the future. And I think that what is great about the movie is they know that this entire thing is stupid. And they have completely leaned into how stupid it is. And they are just as aware of you that this really is a dumb idea. and they're having fun. You can tell that everybody's having fun, and it doesn't feel like crass. It doesn't feel sleazy. It doesn't feel like okay, we're just gonna fucking make this because we got to make some money. It feels as if, hey, if we're gonna go to space, it's got to be kind of silly. It's a Friday the 13th film, really mashed up with. Do you guys get, especially back in the day, did you guys get a lot of Roger Corman produced movies over in Australia, like in your video stores?
You're talking like it's not Full Moon Productions?
No, Full Moon is Charles Band. Roger Corman's had like 3 or 4 different production companies, but like he did like the Carnosaur movies.
Never seen a Carnosaur film. Not to say they're not there in the video stores, sorry, but I haven't seen one.
Okay. So they would reuse a lot of the sets, and a lot of Roger Corman movies were set in space because you could have production value on a relatively small budget or whatever, and you have a confined set, and you have a reason for why everybody's on the same set because they're in a spaceship. They would reuse the same spaceship and for every fucking space movie they made, and every space movie they made was basically aliens done shittily,
poorly. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. This movie part of it feels very much like that. It feels very, very much like a Roger Corman film. But it feels like these guys have seen Roger Corman films and they know how shittily most of these are. And they're leaning into it in a way that I don't think that when Hellraiser goes to space, which I think is Bloodlines, when Leprechaun goes to space.
I've never seen that one.
Of all of the franchise serial slashers who go to space, this is the best one. And I think some of the jokes are actually really funny when they trick Jason into going into the hologram room and they recreate Camp Crystal Lake and they have the 2 slutty girls smoking weed and the girl gets into the sleeping bag.
And then that's where we get the throwback to the
kill. Yeah. But this time they actually kind of show it, and he's just turning her into mush. And then we cut away, and they're like at the computer because they're trying to get the airlock open because the ship's going to explode. And Jason's just in the background bashing her into a tree. And they cut back, and he's still, because she's still alive. She's still like, you're killing me. And he just, and I think that is funny. I think it's really funny.
Yeah. I agree. That's a great gag.
And then when he realizes that it's just like a hologram, and he I think it's a great gag. I think this movie is cheesy, stupid, bad.
Yes. But. Thank you.
I actually like the movie. I like Jason.
Yep, me too.
I think it's good natured. The robot is so corny when she does the fucking Matrix flips and shows up like Trinity and just blows him apart, and she ends up in a fight with Jason. Why in the world they leave his corpse in there with the nanobots, I will never understand. Just fucking blow him out the airlock when he's dead. Get rid of him.
Yes. Yes, of course. I mean, the implication is they're so stressed out about the impending explosion of the ship, they can't just rush to get on to save themselves. Like, I can kind of buy that. That's okay.
It's bonkers.
I like the fact
this
that Jason,
movie is bonkers, and I like it for that.
I like the fact Jason still manages to find a way to smash through glass in this film, even though it's set in space.
Yeah, in space. I think it's fantastic.
And we did get to cut away from the death of the professor, which I thought was a bit shit. We really should have seen him be decapitated rather than to see his head later on. That was a little disappointing. Yeah, I take this film. There's some of those gags work pretty well. I think this is like, what's his condition? He's screwed. That gag is pretty funny. With a shape like a big drill bit. Yeah, I like that. That made me laugh too. I'm not sure how Brodsky or whatever comes back after being stabbed that way. That line is stupid. Every so often it just goes too far into the cheesiness.
Yes.
Like, you have to do better than that. Stabs him again. Yeah, that'll do it.
No, I love that one. When he was like, you're going to have to do better than that to take out a big old man like me, or whatever he says. And then he stabs him and he goes, yep, that'll do it. I thought that was great. I thought it was like, because this is so stupid. Let's just lean into the stupidity of it. And because it's honestly, it's almost a parody of Roger Corman movies It just so happens to also be a Friday the 13th film. And I think that I don't know. For some reason, that whole, having watched a great many shitty science fiction films, I appreciated them taking the piss out of those. The best kill of the movie is, of course, Jason smashing the popsicle head, taking the woman, dunking her head into nitrogen, picking it up. First of all, the effect itself of where her head crystallizes in camera.
Awesome shot.
Is the best shot of the movie.
Yep. Maybe the best shot of the franchise.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's great.
And if we were doing the top 10 kills across the Friday the 13th franchise, that's my number one for sure. So, yeah, I'm glad we agree on that one at the very least.
I don't really care for Uber Jason.
Oh, you don't? I think it's a great idea. Not well enough utilized. I will agree.
Yes, I think it's a great idea that's not executed all that well. I don't know. It doesn't do all that much for me. But for this, even though there's some structural issues, there's some when people learn certain things and figure certain things out, there's some stuff with the doctor that's really poorly written between him and the guy that he's trying to, I don't know. It's kind of fucked up. But I'm not going to, the movie's so stupid, I'm not going to sit here and rewrite it because that'd be really boring. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 10.
4.
And that's a thumbs up 4, but it's still not very good.
I'm giving it 6 out of 10. I enjoyed my time here. It's my third best of the week. This is in the top half tier of the Friday the 13th films for me.
It's my third best of the week as well. Yes. Well, let's get to our final film in the Friday series, which was finally the crossover that was promised to us after Fellini turned down making the movie part 7. I'm talking about Freddy vs. Jason, which was released in 2003 and currently has a 42% on Rotten Tomatoes.
For generations, they have been the two biggest names in terror. He may get the blood, but I'll get the glory.
Freddy's coming back.
This summer, for the first time ever,
She's mine!
two legends will come together.
It's time to put this bad dog to sleep. Oh, gosh!
Freddy vs. Jason. Winner kills all. Rated R.
The film was directed by Ron Hugh. It was written by Damian Shannon and Mark Swift. It is a triumphant return of Robert Englund, last seen in our Nightmare on Elm Street retrospective we did last spooky season, the spooky season of 2021. It was released August 15th, 2003, and a budget of $30 million. It had made $116.6 million at the box office.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, but it feels low. But you have to remember,
this is incredible return.
This is a decade after the heyday of either one of these characters. So, Ken Kinzinger takes on the mantle of Jason for the first time here.
He was the cook on the boat in Jason Takes Manhattan.
No, he's not on the boat.
No, not the cook.
He's at the diner. No, he's the cook in the diner in Jason Takes Manhattan. When Jason walks into the diner and throws him into the glass because he hates fucking mirrors and hates glass. Yes, you're correct.
The ultimate face-off between two horror icons is finally here, and whoever wins, we wins, because this is the goddamn last one in the series.
Did you say whoever wins, we wins?
Yeah, I did. I meant win.
Whoever wins, we wins. Is this more of an Elm Street movie or more of a Friday movie?
I think it's more of an Elm Street film, to be fair.
Oh, yeah, right? This is an Elm Street movie.
Yeah, there's way more in the dreams and way more around that, and Jason just happens to wade into. I think the one exception to that is the scene in the cornfield party where that becomes a full-on Jason film. But otherwise, this is absolutely straightforward, a Freddy film, and that Jason happens to feature in.
So the controversy was we didn't cover it during the Friday retrospective. And people were like, well, where was Freddy versus Jason? And I said, well, just stay tuned. And now we're doing it during the Friday series. I didn't feel like we could really do this movie until we had completed both franchises.
Both franchises. Makes sense.
Yes. I've already covered the reboot of Nightmare on Elm Street with Jackie Earle Haley. I've already covered the reboot of Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
So it just made sense to get through the Nightmare series and the Friday series before we got here. Even though I agree with you, this is much more of a nightmare movie. That being said, I like the idea of fear, which empowers Freddy because he's been erased from existence in this small town. Again, here's this idea reemerging that the contagion of Freddy has been stopped. It has been so greatly diminished. And in those people who they couldn't get to forget about him, they just fucking quarantined them and they put him up into a nut house and they medicated him and they kept him away from everybody. And the ones that couldn't stop dreaming about Freddy, they just put him in a medically induced coma where they didn't experience REM sleep. And I like the setup of this. I think it's really intelligent. One of the ideas when they were switching from Jason to Tommy Jarvis was the writer said that he almost wanted to do like an anthology series where you could follow where the killer wouldn't necessarily always be Tommy, but it would be people who had been infected with the violence that Jason had perpetrated so that you could see the ramifications of the trauma of mass violence.
It's Halloween. We're going to have a good time tonight.
I don't know if that's what he's saying now to try to elevate his stock as a writer because he wrote junk, but I like that idea. That almost works better though in the Nightmare series where there is this idea that Freddy is almost, even we talked about it when we did a retrospective of those movies, the idea is already percolating by Dream Warriors. It's almost as if Freddy is like a shared virus, that the more you talk about him, the more empowered he becomes, the more real he becomes, the more violent he becomes. And I really like that idea. And that's I think a Wes Craven idea or a Frank Darabont idea. And it finds its way. So the idea of the opposite would be true as well. You quarantine, you erase, you delete history, you delete Freddy from the record. And he's so diminished in his power. Even if you dream of him, he can't hurt you. He's ineffectual. So the idea that he's like, I need to find somebody, because I'm not physical, somebody physical that I can manipulate to stage murders that look like I'm back to get people talking about me again so I can actually come back, I think is a really, really good idea. And tying it into the idea that you were talking about where Jason regenerates. If I could get this guy to regenerate, and because he's kind of mindless, and I present myself as his mother, which goes back to the early entries into this series.
Yep.
I can get him to do the killing for me. People think it's me. Then I get to come back. I think that is a fantastic idea.
I agree. And it also builds on this concept that Craven played with in New Nightmare. If you remember back to that one, where he needs belief in him. He wants to become as pervasive and as out there as possible. He's not, in New Nightmare, of course, it's not Freddy. That's just the personification of this evil, or this iconization of this evil. It's playing on that in a sense as well. So I think it's taking arguably some of the better concepts in both of these franchises and sticking them here together on the screen. Yes, it's cheesy still. Yes, it's very silly at times. But I think overall, the balance of what they achieve here is better than probably realistically could have been hoped when you just started with Freddy versus Jason. This is going to be terrible. And surprisingly, mostly, it wasn't.
There's visual details here that I think only come because you have an Asian filmmaker who the visuals are very significant. The concept
this is the best directed film by a mile, I think.
I don't think it's better directed than Jason Lives.
I think it looks better. I think, okay. And maybe I'm responding to the fact that, yeah, sure, it's newer, but also just some of the camera movements and because he's playing in a dreamscape, so you get to play a lot more with what's going on. So we can tilt the camera or whatever axis. We can move the camera in ways that you wouldn't do in the real world, so to speak, because it would take me completely silly and over the top. So that, I guess, maybe I really responded to. But if you were just grounding it in the real world of Jason's world, I hear what you're saying. Number 6 still looks great.
I like the idea that they almost become elemental forces where Jason is represented, because it's like, that's an idea that I don't know that anybody ever really picked up on. Of, again, going back to this was a real rivalry between these two franchises. Paramount versus New Line, a major studio versus an upstart. And Freddy clearly won that at the box office. But it was like, and in popularity, Freddy became everything and Jason just sort of was also there. Still an icon, but the idea of, well, one character's tied to water, the other character's tied to fire. Now, do I need a character saying, Jason died by water, Freddy by fire? How can we use that? No, I don't need you to say that. It was fairly fucking obvious. Also, the whole concept that actually Jason's afraid of water when we clearly see him several times have no problem, including going from Crystal Lake to Manhattan via water, walking on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And Jason lives. He just walks right into the water and then comes up out of the water to the bottom. So I don't think he's afraid of water. I think he drowned maybe in water, but whatever. So sure. Okay. I can accept it. I like the idea that when we pan across to Freddy during that cold open, which I think is phenomenal. I think that summary of both franchises and then tying the idea, and I think that is so clever. I think Robert Englund, it's one of his best performances in the series. I think that narration, the Springwood Slasher, that's what they called me, right? I think that is phenomenal. I think
and a pretty edgy shot of a little girl cowering in the corner and like, ooh.
Yes, very edgy. Him, licking the photos and just, oh God, it's very creepy. But when we pan across Freddy for the first time, he's blue, which Freddy's never been blue before. If you notice that his eyes are blue, his skin is blue because he's disempowered. He has no power. For him, hell is cold because the boiler, the fire, that's tied to his powers, his capacity. If you remember in the Nightmare series, Kristen goes into the dream and he's gone. They buried him. He's dead. And she feels the boiler and he's like, see, it's cold. He's not here.
Yes.
But if you keep talking about him, you're going to bring him back, which is what happens. And the idea when we see him, he's cold. He's the color of blue. And then as the movie progresses, if you watch, his skin gets more and more red until at the end, when he, in the dream sequence, he comes out almost as a completely bright red demon flying up out of the water. He's completely inflamed. I think that is a stroke of genius. I think where this movie is let down is the fucking cast is terrible.
I don't disagree. They're just cast to be, pleasant on the eye, I guess. And the dialogue is the worst part of this film. But I don't watch a Friday the 13th or a Nightmare on Elm Street film for its pithy and clever dialogue. Again, I'm there for inventive kills. I'm there for hopefully a clever enough premise that it can all hang together. And that's essential in this movie. You're bringing these two horror icons again, and we've described it already, and we both agree they've done a really good job there. I'm certainly not giving it a 10 out of 10. Don't get me wrong here. I'm just saying I think this is a good film because it achieves what it sets out to do, which is kill a whole bunch of people, of characters. It's sometimes in inventive and fun ways. Fun, from the psychopathic point of view, from the I'm a horror film fan point of view. And to have these two go at it, which they do go at it pretty hammer and tongs in the last 15 minutes of the movie, which good, thank God, because for a while there I was a bit worried it was going to be a neutered, pathetic kind of final brawl, but it's not.
Is this movie good because it has a fake Jason Mewes?
I made that exact note. Is this guy meant to be Jason Mewes? Are they just ripping straight off the viewer skew-verse here?
Yeah, he's
what's
Jay.
going on?
Yes, he's 100% Jay from Jay and Silent Bob, to the point where Jason Mewes was like, had they asked me, I just would have done it. He's like, I just would have played Zoidberg or whatever the fuck this character's name is. Yeah, he's just like, I was like, I just would have fucking done it. They could have just asked me. But instead, they just completely ripped him off. They ripped off his behavior. They ripped off the way he looks, the way he talks, the way he dresses. The fact that he doesn't say snoochie boochies is just, that's the only thing holding it back from this being Jay.
100%.
If he had tucked his penis and did the Buffalo Bill dance, it would have been like, oh my God, they could have had a lawsuit. I honestly, I shit you not, I'm not a Kevin Smith fan. I straight up think they could sue over that character.
That goalie was pissed about something.
The character of Freeberg, I think, was, I don't know that you would even say inspired by the Jay and Silent Bob character. I feel like it was sort of a direct ripoff. It almost takes you out of it because you're like, wait, is that guy from Jay and Silent Bob? And what is he doing here?
I mean, it was amazing when they offered this and I went and I played Freeberg and it was like a lifelong dream come. Wait, I didn't play Freeberg. I wasn't in that movie.
It's so very clearly, and I don't know why he's in the movie. I don't know why they decided to add Jay from Jay and Silent Bob into this movie, but cast a guy that looks just like him, but isn't him. And then
Zeitgeist. We're just trying to get anything in.
But it doesn't. It's not a joke. It's not played as parody. It's just he's just a guy. He's just a ripoff character with no explanation. I think some of the Freddy digital effects, especially when he's the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland with the fucking long. It
looks like it comes from Jason X.
Terrible. Yes.
Yeah.
It's awful.
With the budget that was twice as big. So I agree that it falls over in some of those places.
Of all of these, this is the first one I ever saw in theaters because I was finally of age, and it was the big crossover that we'd all been waiting for. And I saw it in theaters, and even in theaters, some of the digital effects sucked. When he rips her nose off, Kelly Rowland's nose, that always looked terrible. Obviously, she drops an F-bomb where she calls Freddy Krueger an F-slur, which is just bizarre. He also has probably something you couldn't get away with today, which is a spin off of when he go in his movies is how sweet fresh meat, which is really gross because again, the subtext is he's raping children, and the subtext with him and women is he's a rapist, right? That's I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy tongues her through the phone. Like that's what makes him so disturbing. And the fact that he became again like a kid's clown icon is so sick. It's so weird. But then in this one, it's a twist on that, and he goes, "How sweet, dark meat." Mm-hmm. It's like you can't fucking do that. Like Freddy would say that, but that's not. I don't think that would fly today.
I agree. But at that stage, again, you watch the films in their context. In 20 years ago, almost, you could get away with saying those things, and it was okay. We know now it's not, but it does make him even more disturbing. And indeed, same with the F slur.
Now her
word then,
her death when she's like, "You're not even scary. You're not even scary," and he's just sort of very slowly doing that James Cagney walk that he does with the glove up. And then he stops, and then he honestly, I think this is one of Robert Englund's best performances as Freddy, when he just like points behind her with the dagger finger, and she turns around and Jason's there, and he just whacks her I don't even know that he really cuts her. He just whacks her with the machete,
with the flat of the blade,
flat of the blade, and throws her to the tree trunk, snapping her neck and killing her. I thought that's incredible. The other thing that I really liked is the other death is, well, it's not even the full death. When the girl from Ginger snaps.
Yes.
When she's in the boiler room. And Freddy's not quite powerful enough yet.
He's about to get her though.
There's that scene where he's about to get her, but before he's about to get her is when she falls and he just goes, "Oh." So he almost has like a faux sympathy for her because like she landed really fucking hard, and he goes, "Oh."
You're the one that captured.
Oh, don't worry about my little errand boy. The only thing to fear is fear himself.
Like there's just what it is it's Freddy at his funniest dialed down enough to where he's actually funny again. Because we remember when we talked about the Nightmare series, it got so over the top, it was not even funny. It wasn't even sadistically funny. It was just pure buffoonery.
Certainly by 5, but I think you thought by 4. So
yes, but they dialed him down just enough that he's got those funny moments. It's just more timing, and it to me, it's like, okay, this is honestly, it may not be one of the best Friday the 13th movies. This may be one of the best Nightmare on Elm Street movies by a mile.
I don't disagree.
Robert Englund's great in this.
It's good, and what I liked, and I was coming to there with where Ginger Snaps dies, is he's about to get her, and then suddenly just blood explodes out of her, and the look of shock on his face, and then you realize she's been in the traditional Jason impaling 2 people having sex, which is also a really uncomfortable moment because there's some guy who's literally raping her or about to do so. because she's unconscious there on the ground. So this whole non-consent moment.
Yes.
She dies there as well, which is kind of heartbreaking in a way, but it's such a good moment. And that's where Freddy realizes, I can't control Jason. This is not going the way that I thought it's going to go. I'm going to have to take him out now myself. That's great. I've set you on a job, but Jason's not controllable.
No, she was mine. Yes. You're right.
Really good moment. And then we get arguably the best death in the film, which is when the guy who's organized the party, the fat kind of jock-ish character, is running away from... He does the smart thing, is he just runs away from Jason,
who is on fire. Rave. Yeah.
Yep. Walking through the cornfield with a pretty cool shot from above with a trail of flames behind where Jason's walking because all the corns get set on fire. And he just throws... He's like, get out of here! And then he throws the flaming machete blade, which bursts through his stomach or through his sternum, and he falls over and dies. I'm like, that was cool. Well done, movie. I enjoyed that one.
Well, he throws a pitcher of beer on him or liquor, or whatever it was, and then lights him on fire and goes, burn, motherfucker, burn! And then runs away from him because he's not dying.
Very clever.
And then Jason just slowly walks like Frankenstein on fire through a cornfield. Yes. The only thing that's bad about that is if you look close enough, you can see the blood tube. It's very prominent. You can see the
I missed that
contraption on the guy's chest. Yes. Yeah, it's a good kill.
And a little bit, as much as we just shat on the characters, because obviously Laurie's not much of a final girl. She works
or an actress.
Her boyfriend, or an actress. Her boyfriend is I think it's what's his name? Ritter's son.
It's John Ritter's son.
John Ritter's son. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Jason
whatever.
Ritter, I think.
But, yes, that's his name. We get I guess he's meant to be the geeky kid who's got a crush on Laurie, and he keeps getting shut down more by Kia, so Kelly Rowland's character, who's really awful to him, and eventually he's had a couple of drinks or been forced to drink.
Is his name
shuts her down.
Lloydberg? What's his name?
What was his name? Linderman,
yes.
Yeah.
Actually, his death is really sad.
I was going to say, we just got through saying the film the characters aren't very good, but I actually felt something when he died.
Yeah, he's one of the better characters, though, but he's one of the better actors in the movie.
That helps. That doesn't hurt. But he really he shuts down Kia, and then now she's kind of interested in him because the film doesn't do a good enough job of this, but it almost implies they start to develop feelings for each other, which would have been maybe in a longer cut would have been really awesome because he effectively dies to save her. He steps up in front of Freddy and also Jason Ritter and Laurie. And then Jason flat arms him into a, whatever it is, some kind of bracket sticking out of the wall, and he gets impaled on it, but then manages to get Kia out of there, and she stops over him, and he's like, no, you go, it's okay, I'll follow you it's okay. Go get some help.
Sit here and
she doesn't go get some help. She runs straight back in and gets killed herself. I'm like, well, you just made Lindeman's death for nothing. God damn it, woman.
Yeah. Well, the reveal of it too, though, is when it just like slowly he's like
really
watches her
goes slowly around.
He just watches her walk off, and then very slowly the camera pans down. And you see how much blood he's lost, and you realize he hasn't moved since the camera's pan. He's died from blood loss. And it's like not even a direct kill from Jason or Freddy. He's literally just swatted away and accidentally gets stuck with something, and that's like you're in a slasher movie, and the slasher didn't even think enough of you to kill you. You just died by accident.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. Anyway,
kind of heartbreaking. Yes, it is.
And the same with the other guy I kind of liked was the cop who was not in on the conspiracy to keep Freddy from spreading and Stubbs. He just gets killed really fast as well. I thought he could have done a lot more, and I thought they were setting him up to be a bit more of something in the film.
And the death was lame, just being electrocuted. Yeah. Oh, it was stupid.
Again,
it was
almost incidental.
Incidental. That almost goes back to like the Jason Takes Manhattan when the dork who's got the hots with the bitch gets electrocuted in the bowels of the ship. It was like that's just a repeat of that shit. When that causes the fire. Also, I think it's a stroke of genius that these movies, the Friday movies have told us all the way through that underneath it all, Jason is basically a child. And so the idea of who does Freddy terrorize the most but children? And the scene when he finally reveals that Freddy's been presenting himself as Pamela Voorhees, when he reveals that Pamela Voorhees, he's not, it's been him, he's been manipulating the whole time. And Jason goes berserk, but then he reduces him to a child.
Yes.
And it's fucking torturing, shivering, scared, deformed child, Jason. And he's like, now there's a face only a mother could love. It's like you almost feel sympathy for Jason in this movie a little bit. Of the two, he is definitely the closer to a protagonist of the two monsters that we get. I do laugh. It is corny as fuck. And some people hate it, but I do laugh because of Robert Englund when in Jason's dream world, when he's ping-ponging Jason around, and then he goes, oh, tilt.
Yeah.
Because
that part, that's where it went too far for me, those kind of moments.
No, it's classic Freddy, you know? It's kind of stupid. I liked it. I'm going to give it a 4.25, and of this week, it's number 2.
Wow. I think you made the joke earlier on, mark your diaries, ladies and gentlemen. This might be the first episode in the history of Binge Movies, which I have guested on, where my overall average score is higher for the films than you. I like this film. I legitimately had a good time with it. Again, for what it is, the moments we've talked about don't really work for me, but the concept is very good. Some of the execution's a little bit off, but overall there's a glossiness and I think there's more care taken with this product than I could ever have hoped for, really. And it doesn't surprise me that it took the most money by a long way, even though I had the biggest budget also equally by a long way. So, yeah, I'm giving this a 6.5 out of 10. It is my second of the week.
Well, our rankings are fairly similar. It's just our scores are wildly different. If you're wanting kill counts for Jason Lives, my kill count says 19. For The New Blood, it was 16. For Jason Takes Manhattan, and another 19. For Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, the biggest body count with 27. Jason X had 25, and Freddy vs. Jason also had 25, 21 for Jason, and 4 kills for Freddy.
Actually, technically speaking, Jason X had a much bigger body count because they destroyed a whole bloody space station.
Oh, that's actually true. Somehow their spaceship, though, was about 3 times the size of an entire space.
At one point when it goes cruising straight through it. Yeah, you're right. Still.
It's like the space station was just like, are these all little people? Or is that where all the space leprechauns are? Is that where they're stationed in space? Okay, it's time for us to give a recap of part 2. Coming in dead last for me is number 6 is Jason Goes to Hell, which give a 0 to 10. Anti-Vault Material straight away. Coming in number 5 is The New Blood, which give a 2 out of 10. Number 4, Jason Takes Manhattan, 2.5 out of 10. Number 3, Jason X, 4 out of 10. Bonkers, but I enjoy it. Number 2, Freddy vs. Jason. Yes, it's more of a nightmare film than a Friday film, but it's a better combination, a better pairing than we probably deserved. 4.25 out of 10. Number 1, With a Bullet, as Paul said, Jason Lives, 8 out of 10. Now, had Freddy vs. Jason ended the way they intended with Pinhead appearing and saying, what seems to be the problem? And that was going to set up the 3 of them. I don't know that that's a good movie, right? Like the Cenobites versus Freddy versus Jason, like it gets a little wonky.
Get pretty involved, wouldn't it, to have to try to keep the pieces moving?
Yes.
I'm not sure how that would work, but I'm sure they could work out a way if that's what they wanted to do. But of course, we've had nothing for 19 years. Well, other than the remake of both.
All right, what's your recap, Paul?
Coming at number 6, the worst of the week, and as we'll find out, possibly pretty close to the worst of the franchise, is Jason Takes Manhattan with a 2.5 out of 10. The New Blood, slightly better, 3 out of 10 at my number 5 spot. My number 4 spot is Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, 4.6 out of 10. Fine film, nothing wrong with it, as far as 4.6 out of 10 goes. Jason X is my third best, 6 out of 10. And Freddy vs. Jason, I give a high 6.5 out of 10 as my 2 spot, and my number 1, as Jason has said, and we both agree. Our entry to continue in the shortlist is Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives with a 7.2 out of 10.
All right, Paul, as quick as possible, I'm going to give you my total definitive ranking of the Friday series. Coming at number 11, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, 0 out of 10. Coming at number 10, Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, 2 out of 10. Coming at number 9, Friday the 13th, Part 3, 3D, 2 out of 10. So it's a tie there. Coming at number 8 is Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, 2.5 out of 10. Coming in number 7, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning, 3 out of 10. Coming in number 6, Jason X, 4.0 out of 10. Coming at number 5, Freddy vs. Jason, 4.25 out of 10. Coming at number 4, Friday the 13th, 6 out of 10. That's the original. Coming at number 3, Friday the 13th, Part 2, 6.75 out of 10. Coming in at number 2, Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, 7 out of 10. And the single best Friday the 13th film ever made, number 1, with a bullet, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, 8 out of 10. My aggregate score is a 45.5 points out of a possible 110. And my average score for the franchise is a 4.1.
Same, but different. We differ on a couple of key points. So my worst Friday the 13th film across both the episodes that we've done is undoubtedly Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, 1.6 out of 10 for me. Then at number 10 for me, Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan with a 2.5 out of 10. My number 9 spot is Friday the 13th, Part 3 with 2.8 out of 10. My number 8 spot, Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, 3 out of 10. My number 7 spot. This is confusing because I go back and forth on my list. This one goes to Friday the 13th, Part 2 with a 4.5 out of 10. My number 6 spot goes to Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, 4.6 out of 10. That's right. I say it's better than Friday the 13th, Part 2. My number 5 spot goes to Friday the 13th, the original, 6 out of 10. My number 4 spot, Jason X, also 6 out of 10, but I'm going to give that one the slight bump because it's got better kills. Number 3, Freddy vs. Jason, 6.5 out of 10. Number 2, Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, 7.2 out of 10. And my favorite Friday the 13th film after this rewatch of all 11 of them is Friday the 13th, the final chapter, 7.4 out of 10.
Holy shit. So you're saying the single best. This is where it's really going to break down, right? You're saying you've added final chapter and Jason Lives.
Yep.
I've added final chapter and Jason Lives. But I'm advocating for Jason Lives as the best out of all of them. And you're advocating for Final Chapter as the best out of all of them, which means if our competitors in Laughs Movie Stand are listening, you got to go with your pick from Part 1 and my pick from Part 2, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair to say. Yeah.
It's getting very, very confusing. I don't
very
even know
complicated
anymore. Paul, tell the people
at
home who you are and where they can find you before I get you out the door and back on a plane all the way to Australia.
Well, I'm the guy that has sat through 11 Friday the 13th films for your entertainment in this spooky season. Jason, how are we going to top this? What are we going to do next year? Because I'm coming back. And by the way, you're going to come on our show before the end of the year. So you need to come back now, and I'm going to put you through the ringer of some top 10 list that mortifies your soul and have you and Wayne go at it. So I hope you'll be kind enough to accept my invitation, which I've just now declared as a decree.
There's only one possible place to go from here, and that's college, Paul, because that's where ghoulies go.
Oh, no. Myself and my friend Wayne, we do a countdown every week. I'm sure you know if you've listened this far through these two episodes back to back. We've had Jason on before. We're going to have him on again. He hasn't said yes, but I can see in his eyes, looking at him across this camera, that he's shaking his head no, but his eyes say yes. So come along and listen to Jason there as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. I cannot for the life of me express how much fun it is sharing the mic with you and pulling these things to pieces. Your insight, even in a franchise like this, is second to none, and I'm often marvel at how amazing you do. And that's why you have the listenership and the base that you do. And a new patron as of today, who is going to stop this absolutely ridiculous nomination for Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell, being anywhere near the anti-vault. I will not stand for it, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, the countdown, movie and TV reviews is where you can find me.
I take your praise, I take your money, and as a father to me in film podcasting, may I just say to you, Happy Father's Day, Paul.
Oh, thank you very much.
If you want to know how to control me, just put on Paul's sweater and tell me what to do. I'll have no choice but to listen. And when you're finally gone, Paul, I promise you I will keep your head on my coffee table in my living room with candles roundabout.
Married for 18 months with the same woman for 11 years. That's the sweetest thing anyone's ever said to me. Thank you, Jason.
All right, folks. You know what time it is? It's time to move on to our next episode. Until next time, binge on.
angels lead to the street. It's an empty dance, and so incomplete. The hollow voices whisper the cry. Farther down the line, there's a reason why. You tried before, but you can't buy it. No matter what you do.
Explorers in the further regions I experience demons to some, angels to others.